this way. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Antonio. I won't repeat my welcome. Hopefully everyone could hear me because the only thing I have going for me is a very loud voice. So let me conduct the roll call to make sure that we have a quorum here present for the meeting, beginning with Dr. Andrew Biggs.
Present.
Judge Arthur Gonzalez.
Present.
Mr. Antonio Medina.
Present.
And Mr. John Nixon.
Present.
Is not present. Mr. Justin Peterson.
Present.
And Dr. Betty Rosa, are you online?
Yes, present.
Not yet. And last but certainly not least, the ex officio member, Governor Pedro Pierluisi.
Present.
Thank you, Governor. So we do have a quorum, and we are now ready to call the meeting to order. Per usual, I would like to ask our General Counsel, Mr. Jaime El Khoury, if you would be so kind as to act as our secretary for this meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jaime. Again, thank you to all of you who are attending either virtually or in person. As always, the audio of this meeting will be webcast both in English and in Spanish and in sign language. If you go onto the website through the English website, you get the English audio. If you go onto the website through the Spanish version of the website, you get the simultaneous translation. As is usually the case, the Oversight Board will be handling any questions or comments from folks who go online through a form that's available on our website. You can find this form on the webcast page. To fill out the form, as will be obvious from the form, I think, please complete the form with your name and any questions or comments you have. We'll take questions up to 15 minutes before the end of the meeting when we have the public comment period, and we will provide answers to those questions, to all of those questions, on the website later, hopefully quite promptly after the meeting. For folks who are here in person, there'll be an opportunity to provide public comments during the public comment period, as I said, towards the end of the meeting, and I'll tell you to come forward, hopefully towards a microphone, to make those comments. So I'd like to welcome a few people. Thank you, Governor. We now have John Nixon and Dr. Betty Rosa are with us virtually as well. So we have all 7 board members here. And I'd like to welcome as well several dignitaries with us. I have on the list that Omar Marrero is here. Is he in fact here? I didn't think he would be here since he's acting as governor right now.
That's right. That's right.
The governor is here. Manuele Cidre, I know is not here. Oh, I thought I just saw him, is here. Secretary of the Department of Economic Development and Commerce. Welcome, Secretary. Fermin Fontanas, I think is here. Yes, Executive Director of the P3 Authority. Brad Dean, hello, Mr. Dean, Chief Executive Officer of Discover Puerto Rico. Roderick Miller, Chief Executive Officer, thank you, of Invest Puerto Rico is here. We'll be hearing from all of them. Thank you so much for making the trip to New York to give us the benefit of your insights. And if there are any other public officials or private sector representatives that I've missed, welcome to you as well. And hopefully we'll have a chance to meet during or after the meeting. We have 6 items on our agenda for today. First, we'll go through the approval of the minutes from our last public meeting and from executive sessions between that meeting and this meeting. We have some brief administrative matters. Third, we'll have an update from the executive director. And then fourth, which is the real heart of this meeting, will be presentations from the government of Puerto Rico and others on economic development, which is the focus of this meeting. We'll then have a public comment period, and finally, any other matters that, that come up. So starting with the approval of minutes, we will begin by approving the minutes from the board's last public meeting, which was held on September 17, 2021. The proposed minutes are attached to the meeting materials, so they are publicly available. The second set of minutes is for the executive sessions that we've held since the last meeting. Those are executive sessions on September 24, October 21, October 29, November 3, November 5, November 7, November 19, December 3, and December 10. Are there any questions that anybody has on any of the minutes? Don't see any questions. Jaime El Khoury did a brilliant job of putting them together. So we're without questions. Would someone like to move the approval of the minutes, or would someone approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Andrew. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether Justin or Antonio was first. As with all of our votes, I'll ask for a voice vote. First of all, in favor to say yes, then any opposed to say no, any abstentions to say abstain. So all in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that motion passes. And we have Andrew's monthly motion to make. Would you like to make that motion?
It's my contribution to the public good. Mr. Chair, I would like to make the following motion. Between the adjournment to this meeting and the opening of the board's next public meeting, the board may consider in executive session any and all matters that is authorized to consider under PROMESA, including first, any certification determinations authorized by PROMESA, including certification determinations under Section 206 of PROMESA. Second, any submissions or authorizations authorized by PROMESA. And third, any filings authorized under Title III of PROMESA. In each case, they're set forth as part of the vote to convene such executive session. The board may also act by unanimous written consent between meetings in accordance with the bylaws, with such consent to include consent by electronic transmission.
Thank you, Andrew. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Arthur. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? I think the motion passed unanimously. And we have one more motion, and that is, can I have someone to move to approve the UWCs, the unanimous written consents that we have adopted since the last public meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Justin. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes unanimously as well. So our next agenda item, getting to the heart of the meeting, is the monthly update from our executive director, Ms. Natalie Jaresko. Natalie, it's your floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are coming very close, and we are very hopeful that Judge Swain will soon confirm the end of Puerto Rico's bankruptcy in the Title III court. But restructuring the debt is not the end of Puerto Rico's road to recovery. It is the beginning. Puerto Rico needs to grow, and ending bankruptcy is one step toward growth. As we await the court's decision, we are today discussing what is next for the Commonwealth's economic future, a future that the Oversight Board and the government agree should and will be very different from what Puerto Rico experienced during the last decade. Just look at Detroit. Detroit has shown that economies do respond to debt restructurings and fiscal sustainability. Growth returned. Can someone put up the next slide? Growth returned. Household incomes rose. Unemployment declined. And poverty levels fell. Puerto Rico can get there too. Key to the success of Puerto Rico's economic moving forward is deliberate and strategic actions towards its economic development, as well as its continued progress towards the structural reforms outlined in the fiscal plan. The roadmap to a more prosperous future is in the fiscal plan. And the fiscal plan is part of the Oversight Board's mandate under PROMESA to help Puerto Rico achieve fiscal responsibility. And the fiscal plan the Oversight Board developed together with the government outlines the reforms Puerto Rico needs to create a solid foundation for economic growth and how these reforms should be implemented. We all know that Puerto Rico's long recession that started in 2006 was not simply a cyclical downturn that could be fixed simply with government stimulus to jumpstart an otherwise healthy economy. The very structure of Puerto Rico's economy needs to change to become more competitive. The world has changed. Supply chains are different today than during Puerto Rico's Operation Bootstrap. Free trade agreements, globalization have created new demands, and Puerto Rico needs to transform its economy to keep up with those massive changes and restore economic growth. I have a feeling we're having trouble with slides. Is that what's going on? Okay. No, this is somebody else's. I apologize for the delay. The fiscal plan includes 5 sets of structural reforms, and Puerto Rico now has a historic opportunity to pave a new path towards prosperity. Those structural reforms defined in the fiscal plan are the baseline of fundamental improvements that are necessary. First, human capital and welfare reform, promoting participation in the formal labor force by creating incentives to work and comprehensive workforce development opportunities. We cannot grow long-term with one of the lowest labor participation rates in the world. Thank you. Education reform, second, transforming the K-12 education system to dramatically improve student graduation rates and test scores. We cannot grow long-term if we don't prepare our future labor force for the jobs of the future. Third, ease of doing business reform, reducing obstacles to starting and sustaining a business. We cannot grow long-term if we can't attract, keep, and grow investments on this island that create the jobs needed to stem out migration and provide opportunity to people. Fourth, power sector reform, providing more reliable, more affordable, and cleaner energy through the transformation of Puerto Rico's energy system. We cannot grow long-term if residents and businesses cannot afford or cannot get reliable electricity. And finally, infrastructure reform, focused particularly on the transportation infrastructure. The percentage of roads in good condition is significantly below the US average, and this deficiency impacts the quality of life residents have, but it also makes doing business in Puerto Rico more cumbersome. So we cannot grow long-term if our roads are congested, our air dirty, and our businesses unable to get products to market efficiently. These reforms are simply the foundation. And building on this foundation, we now have a historic opportunity to invest tens of billions of dollars, of federal dollars, into rebuilding schools, water systems, housing, roads, electric system, and more. Within a post-bankruptcy, more competitive economy, a new stage of economic development is possible. And that is why we invited the leaders of several agencies that are at the forefront of economic development to share their plans and economic development efforts. First, we will hear from the Department of Economic Development Secretary, Manuel Sidre, who will share his vision and action plan for guiding the strategic direction of the island's economic development. Then we will hear from Fermin Fontanes, the Executive Director of the Public-Private Partnership Authority, or P3, on the opportunities in this area. Then we will discuss Invest Puerto Rico's efforts to attract new investors with CEO Roderick Miller. And finally, we will hear about the opportunities and the successes in tourism and how Discover Puerto Rico is positioning Puerto Rico to the world. We are working together to ensure the next stage of Puerto Rico's history builds on post-Title III stability to take advantage of creating a new, competitive, and investor-friendly economy that provides a future for all Puerto Ricans. We believe we have the best opportunity in decades to realize this dream. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Natalie. So let's get started with what, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Justin. And I should have asked for any comments. Are there any comments, Justin?
Yes, Mr. Chair. That was a great summary by Natalie, and I just also want to add that a little more than a year ago, this newly constituted oversight board appointed by former President Trump resolved to end bankruptcy in Puerto Rico. And we've done it, and we're at the cusp of it. And I want to thank my colleagues, and I also want to thank the governor. We could not have done this without his leadership. I'd like to thank the Speaker of the House, Hernandez, and President of the Senate, Delmo. This is why the board was constituted. This is why PROMESA was passed, so that we can end bankruptcy. We're on the cusp of doing it. And I think it's a great day for Puerto Rico. It's why I agreed to serve. And I also want to say that next year in 2022, we're going to end PREPA's bankruptcy. It's going to happen. It's going to happen next year. PREPA's grid needs to be modernized. We need more switch over to natural gas, to renewables, needs to be updated to be more efficient and resilient. And that'll happen when we end bankruptcy at PREPA. And that's next year. It's going to happen. And thank you.
Thanks, Justin. I know Governor wants to say something, but before he speaks, are there anybody else have any comments? Governor, would you like to make some comments before we get started with?
Let them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to comment briefly. I also want to thank that although this past year we have achieved the, at least presenting to the court, the plan of confirmation for the Commonwealth. I also want to thank, including myself, the members of the board since 2016 for laying the groundwork for what we now see as the culmination of those efforts through the hurricane, through the earthquake, through now COVID, et cetera. But it's been a long, arduous effort. And I think both boards, the original board and its current board, deserve credit for all the progress that has been made since the enactment of PROMESA. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Other comments before we turn to the governor? Governor?
Yes, I'd like to make some remarks before the presentations by the opponents. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by thanking the Oversight Board for dedicating today's meeting to economic development in Puerto Rico, an issue that is critical to the island's future, especially as we get ready to close the chapter on the government's bankruptcy process and embark on a new chapter dedicated to building the future prosperity of Puerto Rico. We're grateful for the collaboration of the board in our joint efforts to restructure over $80 billion of Puerto Rico's legacy debt. Pending the final confirmation decision from the Title III court that is expected within the next few weeks, the plan of adjustment for the Commonwealth will provide, for the first time in decades, a stable and sustainable fiscal foundation upon which the government can build a better economic future for Puerto Rico and its residents. The financial breathing room that the plan provides will allow the government to pivot towards the important work of implementing our vision for Puerto Rico's future economy. In other words, the plan of adjustment is the proverbial reset button for Puerto Rico. As the restructuring process comes to a close, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to use this fresh start to move the island forward to the successful modern economy that we all know it is capable of becoming. I want to stress that I am cognizant of the responsibility placed on my administration's shoulders. As most of you know, the federal government has allocated tens of billions of dollars to Puerto Rico to fund its reconstruction from the historic natural disasters that devastated much of the island's essential infrastructure. While this money is critical and necessary to jumpstart the economy, it'll not be sufficient to drive and sustain the long-term economic prosperity Puerto Ricans truly seek. That is why my vision for Puerto Rico's economic development is based on a multi-sectorial approach. On the one hand, we're working swiftly to rebuild the island infrastructure and improve the quality of life of its residents. And on the other, we're taking the necessary steps to strengthen the island's competitive advantages and promote economic growth. In the first place, Puerto Rico has excelled on the health side of the COVID-19 pandemic by quickly becoming the most vaccinated jurisdiction in the US. Furthermore, the federal government has significantly improved Puerto Rico's treatment in the Medicaid program, which helps us provide affordable health care to our people without draining our budget. We're looking forward to the positive impacts of the federal Build Back Better legislation, as well as the recently approved infrastructure bill. Both of them will provide additional funding to Puerto Rico for social programs, such as the expanded earned income tax credit and the child tax credit programs, and investments in infrastructure and broadband connectivity. Also, I have been strategic with the federal pandemic relief funding by allocating over $1 billion of ARPA funding for economic development initiatives that are geared towards helping Puerto Rico recover from the COVID-19 economic impact and propel it to a future of growth. This has also helped us promote Puerto Rico as a safe and attractive tourist destination and solidify our destination's credibility, which has yielded record numbers for the tourism industry this year. The tourism sector is, without a doubt, one of the island's fastest growing economic sectors right now. At the same time, our economic activity index is rising, which shows that our economy is stable and on the road to recovery. Puerto Rico has a world-class manufacturing sector that takes advantage of our bilingual and well-trained workforce. The top pharmaceutical companies make the world's top 10 prescription drugs on the island. And some of the most sophisticated biomedical manufacturing is growing its footprint in Puerto Rico. We have also developed an aerospace corridor that is supported by the experienced ecosystem of services Puerto Rico has to offer. As a matter of fact, the index of coincident indicators in the manufacturing sector during the month of September 2021 reflects an increase of 5.7% from the same month last year, being the 17th consecutive increase in industrial activity after the COVID-19 shock in March 2020. Our manufacturing sector is therefore the most robust and resilient sector of our economy. Moreover, our professionals shine because of their caliber, competitiveness, and experience, which they're leveraging to expand their offer to US markets and abroad. We're also growing new industries, including some that are exporting their products from Puerto Rico and others that are investing in recycling to further our economic development while doing our part for the environment. Now more than ever, the government and the board most proactively work together to ensure a business-friendly environment that can drive sustained long-term economic development while leveraging the federal reconstruction funds. I urge the board to continue working with us and to redouble our combined efforts so that together we can make Puerto Rico's economy stronger than it's ever been before. More concretely, there are several issues that the board could help us with to get us moving in the right direction. First, Puerto Rico's goal of attracting population and new investment will require agility in the energy sector reform, expedited permitting processes, and other ease of doing business reforms, including lowering taxes across the board for both individuals and corporations and simplifying our tax system. Secondly, the process for deploying federal reconstruction funds must be better streamlined for investment in appropriate projects and entities as soon as possible. We have an incredible opportunity to rebuild and modernize our infrastructure, housing, schools, and roads, with over $50 billion of federal funds allocated to Puerto Rico's recovery without having to incur in debt. Ensuring that we have the necessary controls and accountability in deploying federal funds, we believe that a streamlined contract approval process can be implemented in a transparent and competitive manner to avoid fraud and abuse while also releasing funds quickly so that essential work can be started or completed. Finally, it is very important to improve the government's productivity and efficiency through appropriate labor initiatives. We believe that the government can function more efficiently and productivity will increase if we can recruit the best possible employees while at the same time properly motivating existing public servants. We must find ways to
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We have plenty of time for comments at the end of the meeting.
Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves.
Governor, were you finished? Or would you-
I will. It is important that everybody, everybody has a right to
I
express themselves and.
completely agree. I mean, it
And we
is-
must respect that right. And, but I haven't finished my remarks and I would like to do so now.
Thank you, Governor.
We must find ways to improve the profile of our labor force by increasing the wages of our public servants whose pay has been stagnant, primarily due to cost-saving measures that were necessary as a result of our legacy debt, which is about to be right-sized to a sustainable level. Although increased employee wages may create near-term operating cost increases, we believe that competitive salaries will improve the government's efficiency by attracting a high-caliber workforce. Conversely, non-competitive salaries will increase the likelihood that the government will suffer labor shortages that will ultimately reduce the quality and efficiency of its services. I believe we can work together to avoid that scenario. Ultimately, the goal of each of our initiatives is to get people to believe in Puerto Rico again. We need our young people to believe that Puerto Rico is a place worth building their lives in. We also need to incentivize those who have already left the island to return. And we must show both on-island and foreign investors that Puerto Rico is a place where capital can be deployed to generate returns worthy of their investment. We are on our way there, and we're hopeful that the government and the board can work together as partners for Puerto Rico's future of progress. I thank you all, and I look forward to the presentations by the Department of Economic Development and Commerce, the P3 Authority, Discover Puerto Rico, and Invest Puerto Rico, all of whom will expand on our momentum towards economic stability and growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. And Andrew had a question he wanted to ask before I welcome the Secretary.
Ms. Jaresko, I was wondering if you could tell us the degree to which the plan of adjustment, which is in front of Judge Swain right now, would reduce the amount of debt that Puerto Rico has to pay and the debt service costs as a share of the government's annual budget.
The proposed plan of adjustment takes $33 billion in claims against the Commonwealth and reduces it by 80% to just $7.4 billion in new outstanding debt, which would be exchanged upon the effective date. What that means in reality is that instead of paying 25 cents of every dollar of taxpayer dollars that are collected for that legacy debt, Puerto Rico will be able to pay less than 8 cents of every dollar, having the remaining for funding the pension trust for the future, funding expenditures, and funding the essential services and needs of the residents of Puerto Rico.
Appreciate it.
Thank you both. I'd like to now welcome the Department of Economic Development Secretary Manuel Cedre. Mr. Cedre gained widespread recognition as one of Puerto Rico's most successful businessmen while he was at the helm of Los Cedrines, one of the biggest sellers of bakery goods in Puerto Rico. Mr. Cedre is also a former independent gubernatorial candidate, has previously headed several local trade groups, among them the Puerto Rico Retail Association, and has served on the board of many nonprofit organizations. Welcome and thanks for speaking to us.
Morning, Chairman Steele, members of the Oversight Board, Executive Director Natalie Yaresco, Governor Pierluisi, and others that may be on the attendance today, here or virtually. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to share the Department of Economic Development and Commerce vision to transform Puerto Rico into a prosperous jurisdiction we all want and we all deserve. I don't have any doubts that if all components of the society focus on the objective we will describe today, we will reach our aspiration. My vision of Puerto Rico is a rich land, capital of knowledge economy, a healthy country, educated and safe place to live in, a place of opportunities that cares about our senior citizens and protects our kids, a society that respects our environment and in constant pursuit of a better quality of life. And I'm sure we can make it, but it's required things that even thought they may look easy, but they are not. This is the moment to take risk and invest in what needs to accelerate recovery and growth. We will also need to make hard and difficult decisions, but key decisions to have continuity. The economic development plan of Puerto Rico should not be a short-term strategy. On the contrary, it's a long-term strategy in which we need all relevant players to assume this role without protagonism. And now, with your permission, I'm going to speak from my heart. And language for me is a barrier when I speak with my heart. So at my 68 years old, I prefer to switch to Spanish. Thank you for your understanding. Hoy les hablaré de lo que hemos hecho en el
Today I will
Departamento
talk
de
about
Desarrollo-
what we've done in the Development Economy Department.
Hello? Another protest? Okay, good. Hoy les hablaré, si gritáramos menos y hiciéramos más, pero mejor, pero anyway. Hoy les hablaré
So
de lo que hemos
today I
hecho
will
en el
talk about
Departamento de Desarrollo Económico
what
en
we
este
have done
primer
in the
año.
Economic
Pero
Development
más
Department in
importante,
these first
les
years.
hablaré de lo
But
que
the most
pretendemos
important
hacer
is that I
para
will talk about what
balancear
we want to
todos
do
los sectores
to
que
balance
incidirán
all
sobre nuestro
sectors
desarrollo
that
económico
will
a
make a
corto,
decision on our
mediano y
economic
largo plazo.
development in medium
El alto
and long
volumen de transferencias
term.
federales no
In the
recurrentes, la necesidad de convertir a Puerto
needs
Rico en
to
un país ágil
transform
para hacer
Puerto
negocios,
Rico in an
hasta el
agile
fortalecimiento de una fuerza
country,
laboral
and also
capacitada
to
para cumplir la demanda de
strengthen
los
the
tiempos.
labor to
Evaluaremos todo con la
comply with
óptica de que
demand.
nada es intocable y
Nothing
todo es
is
reportable.
untouchable and
La
everything
efectividad
is
de lo que
touchable.
hagamos
Effectiveness of
dependerá
what we
de que
do
contemos con
will
la
depend
colaboración
that
activa
we are
de
having
todos
the
los
active
componentes del desarrollo
cooperation
económico,
of all
algunos de los cuales
components of
están aquí
development,
hoy.
economic
Los
development, and some
componentes
of
de
them
turismo,
are here.
infraestructura,
We need the
educación,
tourism, education,
investigación,
infrastructure,
contributivo,
research,
bancario, entre otros,
contribution,
son
and
todos
banking,
vitales
among
en
others,
cualquier
are
esfuerzo
vital
encaminado
for
a la
any offer
sustentabilidad y
towards
cumplimiento de nuestra
sustainability
misión.
and completion of
Hoy me
our measures.
presento un tanto
Today I'm
optimista,
here very
porque me parece que
optimistic
estamos en un punto de
because for
inflexión.
me, we
Luego de
are
muchas crisis,
reaching an
entre
inflection
huracanes,
point.
terremotos y
We are
otros,
having
hoy podemos
hurricanes,
decir
earthquakes,
que con una
and
deuda
different
reestructurada,
others, but
un
with a
panorama alentador
restructured
del
debt,
lado de la
we are
infraestructura
having a
y un manejo
very
extraordinario en el
positive
tema del COVID,
framework
Puerto Rico
and
lanza el reto más grande
positive
de su historia,
activities
transformar
before
su
COVID,
economía
and
a una
Puerto Rico
sostenible,
is on its way to
alejada de los
transform
estilos que nos
a
trajeron hasta
sustainable
aquí.
economy
Los
away from
principales
what we
índices
had before.
macroeconómicos nos
The
confirman que
main
vamos avanzando.
macroeconomic
Desde el
index
turismo con récord impresionante
says
de
that
noches cuartos,
we're moving
a la
forward,
manufactura con
and
el empleo más
tourism,
alto en sus pasados
manufacturing,
5 años.
and also housing and
Ahora,
constructing is
no
having a
nos
good
podemos
way.
subestimar
But
estos
we
recientes
are
logros.
not able
Ahora
to
es cuando más duro tenemos
take
que
for
trabajar
granted
todos juntos
these
para
achievements.
que
This is
esto que
where
estamos
when
viendo
we have to
podamos
work more,
exponenciarlo
so we
y
are
hacerlo
able to
sostenible y
empower
hacia eso
and
nos
make a
dirigimos.
sustainable growth.
Ahora Para entender hacia dónde vamos,
Now,
tenemos
to
que conocer de
understand
dónde
where are
venimos.
we going to, we
Es de
need to
todos
recognize
conocido
where
que
are we
por
coming
décadas
from.
nuestra
For
economía
decades,
ha
our
girado en
economy
torno a la
has
manufactura
torn
como
or
principal
has been
eje de
moving
producción,
around
siendo
manufacturing
esta
as the main
responsable del
axis.
más del 47%
And we
del
have more
producto
than
interior bruto. Sin
47% of
embargo,
the GDP
tenemos
here. However,
tenemos alrededor
we
múltiples
have
economías,
different economies, multiple
múltiples
economies
economías desarrollalladas que se han anticipado los cambios
developed
venideros,
that have
cada vez se distancian más de
come
modelos económicos que dependen de un solo sector.
that is
Por el contrario,
moving
se han
away
abrazado
from the
a
economic
modelos
sector.
multisectoriales, en la cuales se destacan los
And
servicios,
also we
la
have different
agroindustria, el
services,
turismo,
industry,
entre otros.
tourism, among
Este tema
others.
hay que destacar
And
que
here
hay
we
dos
need
escuelas de
to
pensamiento sobre
underline
la
that we
estrategia de
have two
desarrollo económico.
thinkings.
Uno, que el Estado apuesta a sectores
One,
específicos, que ha sido
the
nuestro
state
caso
is
en Puerto
moving
Rico.
towards
Y
a
dos,
specific
donde se
areas,
apuesta a
which is
tener una
our
base
case in Puerto
sólida
Rico,
donde
and we need to have
cualquier
a
sector puede
solid
crecer.
base
En mi punto
to
de vista,
growth.
creo que la filosofía
And
adecuada
I
para Puerto
believe
Rico
the
es
right
posicionarnos en
philosophy
algún punto en el
for
medio,
Puerto Rico
donde
is
nos
to have a
concentremos en
point
potenciar y
in the
fortalecer
middle
los
where
sectores
we are able
emergentes
to
y de
balance
mayor
and strengthen
demanda global.
the most
Para ello,
important
es vital movernos de la manufactura
global demand.
tradicional a una más sofisticada,
And we need to
donde
move from
predomine
traditional
una mano de obra
manufacturing to a more
diestra y afín
sophisticated
con las
manufacturing,
necesidades de la
which is
cuarta
according to the
revolución
needs of the
industrial.
fourth industrial
Antes de comunicarles mi
revolution.
visión sobre cómo
Before
llegar ahí,
talking about my
permítanme
vision,
compartir parte de lo
I
que
would
hemos
like
hecho
to
hasta ahora.
share part of what
Como
we have done
secretario del
now.
Desarrollo
And
Económico
as a
de Puerto Rico, lo
Secretary
primero que
of
hicimos
Economic
fue
Development
darle
in Puerto
continuidad
Rico,
al
the
proceso de
first that we do
reorganización
is to
ordenado
have
por la Ley CAP
continuity of the
141 del 2018,
reorganization process
mediante el cual
ordered by
se consolidan en el Departamento de Desarrollo
ordered
Económico
by the
las
law,
principales
and we
entidades
are
reguladoras de
consolidated
desarrollo
the
económico de
main
Puerto Rico,
entities for
con un
developing
80%
Puerto
de
Rico,
esa
and we have
reorganización completa
80% of
y
this
ahorros desde
whole
la
recognition
contratación hasta
and
los
earnings
headcounts.
for
Aún quedan algunos
headcounts.
retos para
We still
finiquitar,
have some
pero estamos
challenges,
convencidos
but we
que
are
en muy poco
convinced
tiempo
that
habremos
in very
construido una
few
agencia
time
ágil,
we have
accesible y
built
eficiente,
something agile and
convirtiéndose en el
efficient,
modelo a seguir en
and
el
it
servicio
would
público
be
de Puerto Rico
transformed in the
para
model
beneficio
to
de
follow for
todos
Puerto
los sectores
Rico for the
económicos.
benefit of
En
the
segundo
economy.
lugar,
In
una
the
vez
second
ocupamos la
place,
secretaría, abrimos los
once
canales de
we
comunicación
have this
con
secretary,
todos
we
los
open the
principales
channels of
sectores
communication
productivos del
with
país
the
para
main sectors
entender de
of the
primera
country
mano
in
los
order to
asuntos que daban y
understand
que
in
debían ser prioridad
firsthand
en nuestra
the
agenda. Me
priorities.
siento complacido
And
que
I'm
hemos
very
desarrollado una
pleased
estrecha
that we have
relación de trabajo
developed
con Investor
very
Público y su
close
CFO,
relationships
Lord Miller, con turismo, con su director
with
Carlos Mercado,
tourism,
con el
Carlos
DMO y su
Mercado,
CEO Brad
and
Dean,
also
entre
with
otros
Brad Dean,
principales
among
sectores que por
other
mucho
main
tiempo
sectors, and
habían
that for
perdido
many
efectividad
time have
por
lost
falta de
effectiveness
comunicación.
because of the lack of
Creo
communication.
fervientemente que el
I
desarrollo
really
económico
believe
no es
that
una
economic
estrategia cada
growth
4
is
años,
not a
y menos
strategy for
una
every 4 years
responsabilidad de un sector en
and
específico.
not
El
only one
desarrollo es un
sector's
compromiso
responsibility.
conjunto.
Development is a
Por otro lado,
commitment, a
otra de mis
joint
prioridades
commitment.
ha
On the
sido
other hand,
impulsar una
one of my
sana
other
administración
priorities
pública,
is to
en
launch
especial en el uso de los
healthier
incentivos en el
public
TEC. Por
services.
tal razón, nuestra
And
oficina de
for that
incentivos
reason, our
ha comenzado un
office
proceso
has
histórico de
started a
fiscalización de
historical
decretos de incentivos.
process.
Por primera vez
For
estamos
the first
fiscalizando a los
time, we
beneficiarios
are
de las leyes de incentivos y al
taxating
día de hoy hemos
different
revocado
entities,
sobre
and
100
today
decretos,
we
cuando
have
en toda la historia de la
revoked over
oficina no se había
100
revocado más que
decrees.
20 decretos. Y
And
apenas
in
estamos
general,
comenzando.
in the past, we have just
Jugo de
revoked
agua,
only
voy a agradecer.
20, and we have just started.
Eh,
So we are going in a
me
good
seca la
way.
boca, gracias. Bueno,
I'm sorry,
gracias.
my mouth
Yo
is
no-
right.
yo no
I'm
veo.
sorry.
Por primera vez, como dije,
For
por
the
primera vez
first
estamos
time, as
fiscalizando
I said
los
before,
decretos de incentivo y por primera vez
we
estamos
are having
logrando
different decrees and
revocar
incentives,
sobre
and
100
we
decretos cuando
are
en toda la historia de la
achieving
oficina
now
no se
to
habían
have the
revocado más que 20
revocation of
decretos y apenas estamos comenzando. Por otro lado,
more than
nuestro equipo
100
implementó un
decrees, and
comité de
before we
evaluación
just
de
only used
incentivos para que,
to
entre otras
revoke only
cosas, mirar
just
el
20.
retorno de dichos
And
incentivos y
we
no
want to
aprobarlos
have
a
those
ciegas.
incentives
De la
and
misma manera,
to
en sintonía
have
con
them
nuestro
for the
objetivo de
benefit.
absoluta
And
transparencia,
also for
estamos
the
listos
completely
para publicar antes de que
transparency,
se acabe el
we
año
are
el reporte
willing
anual
to
de la I-60,
publish the
que
annual
incluye
report of
análisis de
the
retorno de
ICC,
inversión
which
para
is
varias leyes de incentivos, datos que no se habían
including
sido
different
publicados.
incentives and information that
Además, una vez
hasn't
en funciones,
been
junto
published
al equipo
before.
de
And
trabajo,
once
nos dimos a
in
la tarea
this
de definir unos
work, we
objetivos para
decided
nuestra
to
agenda.
reach some
Dos de
goals.
esos son
And
atraer,
two of them
retener
is to
al
attract and
extranjero y
retain
desarrollar el
foreign
empresarismo local
capital
para
and to
llevarnos a competir en los
develop
mercados globales.
companies in order
Dos
to
objetivos
increase global
grandes y
markets.
difíciles,
Those are
pero
big
que junto a Invest Puerto
challenges,
Rico,
but
las
together
asociaciones
in Puerto
empresariales,
Rico
el sector
with the
privado y los
businesses and
conglomerados
private
industriales,
sector and also in
trabajamos
the
juntos para
industry
dirección.
will work
Nos
together
queda muy
towards
poco,
this
nos queda
direction.
muy claro
And we
que para
still
lograr estos
miss
dos
a lot.
objetivos
And for
es urgente
achieving these
elevar la
goals is
competitividad de Puerto Rico.
urgent to increase
nada sirve que
competitiveness in
Inves
Puerto Rico.
salga al mundo a vender un
Puerto
producto
Rico
que no
is not
sea de
able to
igual
go
o
out
mejor a los que
to the
competidores.
world and sell
Por
some
lo tanto,
product that
Puerto
is
Rico
not
como
having
producto
the
no,
best
si no es competitivo,
quality as the rest.
atención
So
que
if
Inves,
Puerto Rico
el
is
gasto
not
de Inves se ve perdido.
competitiveness,
En el
then the
Departamento de
investment
Desarrollo
is
Económico
lost.
estamos
In the
obsesionados
economic
con el tema de
development
competitividad.
department, we are
Pero la
obsessed
palabra
with
competitividad
competitiveness,
puede
but
ser
this word
usada de manera bien
competitiveness
amplia.
should
Por eso
be
nos hemos
used in
dado
a
la
very
tarea de
wide
definir
manner.
6
So
puntos
that's why we
principales
have
que
defined
entendemos
6 main
impactan
goals
directamente la
that
competitividad de
had
Puerto
a
Rico.
direct
Esos mismos
impact
6
on
puntos
Puerto
han
Rico's
definido nuestra agenda de trabajo por
competitiveness.
los pasados
And this
11
has
meses.
decided
Es
our own
importante
agenda
recalcar
for the
que
last
actualmente
11
estamos
months.
embarcados en
And
un
we need to
proyecto
say
para lograr que
today
Puerto
we
Rico sea
are on a
incluido
project
en el
that
ranking mundial de competitividad del
allows
IMD
Puerto
Center
Rico to
para
be
realmente
included in the
tener
IMB
un
Center
marco de
project
referencia
in order to
comparativo
have
y
a
poder medir
framework,
nuestros
a
avances.
comparison to
Estos 6
measure
puntos
our
son
advances. And these
logística y
6 points
conectividad,
are logistics and
energía, sistema
connectivity,
contributivo,
energy, tax and
talento y
incentive
desarrollo de la fuerza
policy,
laboral,
talent,
innovación
ease of
y
doing business,
los servicios
innovation,
doing business, con
capabilities,
enfoque específico en el tema de los permisos.
specific, having a
Todos estos 6
specific
pilares tenemos
focus
algún
on
tipo
the
de
first
influencia para
point.
mejorarlo,
Those are
pero
a
hay
big
unos que
influence,
controlamos más
but
y hay
also
otros que controlamos menos, por supuesto. Y
there are
aunque
some
podemos discutirlos
controlling
todos en
some
detalle,
ones and
quisiera
some controlling
enfatizar en
others,
los
but
3
I would like
principales que
to
hemos estado
emphasize
trabajando
that
y que
we
pueden
are
tener un
working
impacto a
on the
corto
3
y largo plazo.
main points and may
Comenzando
have
con
a
algo que
long
tal vez llevamos
and
mucho
medium
tiempo
term
escuchando y no
impact.
vemos tanta
We have
mejoría,
heard so
y
many
eso es
things
el
that
ease
we
of doing
haven't
business.
heard a lot of
Debo
improvement.
decir que sin
But
duda
this is the course
este
of
es
the
nuestro
business.
mayor reto.
But of
Aunque
course,
tengo que
this is a big
reconocer el
challenge,
trabajo del
and I
equipo y
have
los
to
avances que
recognize
hemos
the
hecho en
teamwork and
disminución del
different
backlog de
advantages
permisos,
that we
la
have
realidad es
and the
que este
different
problema
realities,
requiere
and
integración
that this
gubernamental,
needs a government
apoderamiento ciudadano
integration,
y no
empowerment from the
resistencia a los cambios.
citizenship in order
No es
to
menos
resist
cierto
changes.
que a través de la
And
tecnología
it's
y en
true that
especial con el
through
trabajo del PRI,
technology and
vamos a
especially with
lograr
FRIT,
simplificar
we
y
will
reducir la
simplify
cantidad
and
de documentos
reduce
que un
the
ciudadano tiene
amount
para presentar
of,
a la obtención de su permiso.
of
Ya en el
resources
tema
that
del
citizens
permiso
have.
único, hemos
Talking about the
reducido de
unique
40
permit, we
documentos
have
a
reduced
4
from
documentos.
40 to 4 different
Además, el
documents.
equipo de
And
OPED ha
also
comenzado
the
un
OPTED
proceso de
group
revisión
has
organizacional.
started to give this
Necesitamos
information
mejorar la
in a very
operación y la
good
visibilidad.
manner, and we need to improve
Junto a esto,
operation.
estamos
And
buscando
with
varias
this,
vías
we
para
are
disminuir
looking
la
for
cantidad de
different
permisos
ways
que requieren
to
endosos
have
gubernamentales.
the
Y
permits
hoy
and
se
that are
trata de que
required in the
se
country.
Aún con estas mejoras, la
So with these
expedición de permisos
improvements,
sigue siendo nuestro principal reto.
still
Este asunto
to
requiere fuerza
expedite
de
processes is our big
soluciones fuera de
challenge.
la caja. Tenemos que hacernos las
And
preguntas
we
que
need to make some questions to ourselves in order to have this
el
improvement.
gobierno tiene que dar un permiso de uso.
So we need to have a
Establece
use
un
of permit
comportamental
maybe,
para
and
que ahí
also
debemos
we
realmente ser
need
transformacional
to
en este
be
tema.
transformational in
Una
this way.
pregunta más sencilla es,
And
¿por
an
qué el
easier
Departamento
question
de
is
Salud
why
y Bomberos
the health
tiene que
department
emitir una certificación cuando
has
sin
to
duda alguna
allow the certification
la compañía de seguro que emite una póliza antes de emitirla? Me parece a mí que en
when
esta cuestión hay un
we are not
tema
having the
que
proper
pensar fuera de la caja. ¿Por qué la
resources.
renovación es anual?
Why a renovation is not seen as a
La
good way?
administración, sin duda, ha dado
Communication is
avances,
not
ha buscado soluciones legislativas y administrativas para algunos de estos temas. Es un tema prioritario del señor
was not
gobernador.
good.
Nosotros en el Departamento de Desarrollo Económico
Everything is having a good priority, and we in our department
hemos
are
constituido
very focused in development.
donde participan los principales responsables de permisos, desde los jefes y secretarios de
We
las
need
agencias
to have a wide participation from different sectors,
Claro está.
and it's very clear that ISO goes beyond,
que como la Junta puede apoyar
and we need to understand that the board may be able to support in all this big development, and we have agencies also willing to participate.
La de mayor impacto que puede tener es a largo plazo es el tema de talento y desarrollo de
Talent
la fuerza.
and development of the workforce is having a good development.
Perfecto. de acuerdo.
Gracias.
Nuestra segunda prioridad y
Our
posiblemente
second
la que
priority,
mayor impacto pueda
possibly
tener en el
the
largo
major
plazo,
impact we may
es el
have
tema de
in a medium
talento y
term
desarrollo de la
is
fuerza
talent
laboral.
and development of the
La
workforce.
actividad de la fuerza laboral de un país impacta
The workforce of a country is having a positive or negative impact also,
va a impactar la capacidad de
and
innovar.
may impact the capability or the capacity a household is having.
En este sentido,
And in that
nuestro
sense,
ha sido atender dos asuntos.
we need to
Uno,
address two different topics. One
recursos humanos, y
is
dos,
to have the proper
la
human resources,
riqueza de nuestros recursos humanos comparado con las tendencias que se ven en las diferentes industrias.
and we need to have different trends, or to look at different trends that we see in the countries as general.
Tecnología, el sector
We
aeroespacial.
need to talk about aerospace
El
technology.
primer esfuerzo en esta dirección
And the
fue
first
sentar
effort
los
towards
principales
this
actores de este tema en la
is
misma mesa.
to
Un esfuerzo
sit in the
que le
table
llamamos
the same, the
de industry.
sectors that we need to improve
De las
for
universidades
improving the
principales
industry.
de educación del gobierno de Puerto Rico,
We
representantes
need
del
the
sector
education and the government of Puerto Rico and different representatives
principales industrias que hablamos.
and the main
IT,
industries that we've talked about before.
Y aquí hicimos un levantamiento
And
de
from
información
here,
de
we need to
necesidades
raise
que
information
cambian
with
en
different
las
needs
tendencias
and
que estos
priorities and trends.
Esto nos ha llevado a la creación
And
de un
this
grupo
will
técnico
help for a creation of a permanent group
información y
that will
proveer
give essential information and will provide
educativo. Este grupo servirá de
different
insumo
information. So this group will be very helpful
para que faciliten el que las instituciones académicas
for
puedan
making it academic institutions
diseñar y
are
crear
having
lo que se
a
requiere
better way for the creation
viendo.
of
Por
the
esto,
different resources we are able to use for the benefit of the country.
por estas carreras y segundo es el reentrenamiento de los
We need to
profesores y
retrain
educativos. La organización Echar para adelante de la Fundación
the staff,
Popular hizo grandes avances en esta
and
dirección.
also we need to make a good movements towards this direction.
Ayudar algunas cosas de ellos y estamos diseñando programas y
We
grandes
are designing different programs and grants
más proactivamente lograr
in
esa
a very
reforma.
proactive way and to achieve different
Ya
goals.
vemos algunos avances como la creación de
We
un
need to
pupitre
have
de-
different advances as the creation of a program.
El tercer tema que
And the third
lo es el tema de la
topic
innovación.
is about
Aunque
innovation.
puede sonar bien amplio, la manera que nosotros lo vemos es como
The way
logramos
we
que
see this is how we
servicios innovadores
have
que
more
tengan
innovative
más impacto
services
global, que nos
that are
ayude a
having more global impact.
exportaciones. A nivel mundial, este tema se mira a través de varios componentes.
And
Para
here
nosotros,
we see different components.
el primero es talento, pero de
First
esto
of
ya les
all,
hablo.
we
Segundo,
need to talk about talent. Second,
Puerto Rico siempre ha sido
research.
reconocido como una
And
jurisdicción
Puerto
de
Rico has been recognized
de biociencias y medical devices.
in biosciences in medical devices.
Es de las últimas actividades en la cadena de valor. En Puerto Rico no hemos
And in
desarrollado
Puerto Rico, we haven't developed
en la propiedad intelectual. Es por eso que la
intellectual
mayoría de
property, and that's why
los
most of the resources
ese desarrollo en etapa de descubrimiento
are
económico,
in
hay
development
manos
in different phases, and different developments needs to be on the hands of Puerto Rico.
moleculares para lograr posicionarse como un centro de primer orden de
We need to
investigación
get position in a first order
biociencia
of
y médica.
research in
Esto
medical
ante
devices and medicine in general.
la y no haber podido avanzar su operación como se debería. Creo que no
And
es muy
I
tarde
believe
potenciales activos
that we
y
need
los
to empower those assets.
departamentos de desarrollo económico está colaborando muy de cerca
And
con ellos
the economic growth is cooperating closely.
en el desarrollo. Los invito a mirar este activo
And I
como
will
un
invite you to take a look to this asset so we are able to
y de ahí
look
salgan
for
productos.
different support, and therefore we have different products,
El Hospital Comprensivo del Cáncer que es otra gran oportunidad.
and to have different opportunities, to open different opportunities like the cancer hospital, because here we are able to do something great for everyone.
Ya, precisamente la diferencia de nosotros. El otro elemento necesario para provocar innovación
Another
es la-
necessary element to have innovation
dispone para presentarle a los pequeños
is
comerciantes
to have
más de la
different opportunities for small
desarrollo químico, no ha
companies and to have developments that have not represented a
una
good
brecha de
growth.
6 billones de dólares.
We
los
have
pequeños
a gap of $6 billion,
a veces perdemos de
and
perspectiva,
sometimes we lose the perspective.
pero el dinero que los bancos
But
prestan es
money
económica
from
más si
banks
es en actividades de valor. En este
needs
sentido,
to have more value and productivity.
tanto mediante la creación de fondos de capital de riesgo que en manos privadas inviertan en empresas
And we
con
need to invest in companies that are capable of having a sustainable growth.
con el Banco de Desarrollo Económico y el Departamento del
together
Tesoro
with the
State Small Business Credit Initiative, que facilita la
together,
creación
together with the business, with the development bank,
Así que-
and also we need to have a group that is empowering different companies.
Cuarto, debemos mejorar la
And we need
infraestructura
to improve infrastructure
de tecnología,
with
Por año.
technology.
dependido de la industria de manufactura y aunque debemos mantenerla y
And
fortalecerla,
although we need to strengthen manufacturing and to empower manufacturing,
antes empresas netamente puertorriqueñas. en
we need to
exportar
have
sus
100%
productos
Puerto Rican companies that are being strengthened
para continuar
in
atrayendo
order
esa
to continue attracting
grito de tecnología e innovación en
different
cultura,
credit
cultura de imán,
for innovation and technology in human resources and human development.
verdaderamente ser un jugador importante en
We
la
need to
economía,
be an important player in economy
del gobierno y
and to
robustecer nuestra infraestructura
strengthen our resources in our country.
gobernador para este gobierno. Y es demostrado y se está demostrando con la iniciativa de banda ancha que
And
lidera
we
la
need
oficina.
to, and we are showing this with different bandwidth initiatives.
Que si somos exitosos con ellos,
And if we
vamos
are
a ir
successful with different projects,
resultando así
then
que
we
más
are
empresas
able to
que
let
crezcan desde Puerto
other companies to grow.
Rico. Los esfuerzos no pueden ocurrir en un vacío y
And
mirando
those
hacia el
efforts need to look towards the
proyectos que
future, and we need to look at different
la
projects.
Junta de- Sin embargo, esto sí es nuevo
However,
paradero. Sin embargo, estos esfuerzos no pueden ocurrir
these
en un vacío
efforts
y
are
mirando
not
hacia el
possible
futuro
at
hay
a
grandes
void,
reformas y proyectos que como
and
país
there are great
debemos
reforms and
trabajar
projects that we need to work on as a country for the future.
una verdadera reforma contributiva que
We
simplifique
need a real tax
y
reform
haga la vida más simple a los negocios
to
y
make
los
the life
contribuyentes. A la hora
easier for businesses.
cuesta trabajo pensar que una
It
empresa
is
tiene que
hard
llenar
to think that a company
completamente distinto.
has to fill in forms in different systems, and we need to motivate production,
El
innovation.
gobernador Luis y el secretario de Hacienda Párez han comenzado a darle forma.
The
y
governor
nosotros
and the Secretary of Finance have started this reform,
Esto es
and we
una gran
should
oportunidad
be
para
integral
incentivar
part
lo
of
que
these
realmente
efforts
añade valor a la economía
to motivate
mismo
what
tiempo
really
mejorar
adds
la
value to
eficiencia
the economy and really improve the
Creo,
ease of doing business in
Es
Puerto Rico.
importante que entendamos una realidad de Puerto Rico.
I also believe it is important that we understand the reality of Puerto Rico.
Que ha funcionado para desarrollar una industria importante de manufactura. Y esto ha sido así porque
We have
hemos tenido
developed an
desarrollo
important manufacturing
de energía. Es
sector,
importante entender que aún tenemos esos retos y no podemos
but
pretender
there's still
llevar
light challenges ahead.
5% del GDP de Puerto Rico. La infraestructura crítica es esencial
Critical
para
infrastructure is essential,
la eléctrica y de generación de energía, que continúa siendo nuestro principal obstáculo. Cabe
and
resaltar que
the
esto
generation
ya
of electricity is still the main struggle
esto
that we
será un
face.
problema del pasado. La reforma de propiedades comerciales, en nuestras experiencias
The
visitando
reform of commercial properties in our experience is paramount to attract investment, to have world-class properties.
tenemos un inventario que necesita de mucha inversión para poder
We need
modernizarlo
a lot of investment.
del mundo. Por eso es algo que ya hemos comenzado a hablar con P3 para
And we've
desarrollar
started talking about that with P3
propiedades de PRICO, comercio y exportación y optimizar así las propiedades en la administración de terreno.
to
Además,
enhance properties and land administration.
apoyo de los activos estratégicos como lo son Roosevelt Roads y el aeropuerto de Aguadilla. Ambos activos
We
del
need
departamento
to improve our most important assets like
Road, estamos
the
próximos a
airport,
lanzar los procesos de competencia para Master Developer que necesitamos
and
para
we need
desarrollar
to start the competition processes for master developer.
Además, en el aeropuerto de Aguadilla trabajamos con la
In
de la
addition,
mano
in the Aguadilla airport,
del apoyo
we
propuesta
are
importante
working
para
with the
convertir
important
el centro de
support
apoyo
and proposals of other players.
Volviendo al tema de talento y recursos humanos.
Going
lograr que
back
la
to
universidad
talent and human resources,
desarrollo de programas y currículos que nos permitan entrenar el talento
we
que
need to
necesitamos.
develop the curricula necessary to develop the talent that we need, which will be key for Puerto Rico.
Lograr el aumento de su producción, investigación y desarrollo también es fundamental. Y por último, todos reconocemos los
Finally,
grandes
we all recognize the great challenges that lie ahead,
retos en el talento. Sin embargo, nosotros no seremos efectivos logrando
but we
esta
shall not be effective in this transformation
con mayor apertura
unless the board
de actualizar las escalas salariales y
broadly
demás
looks at the need to update wages
del sector público de Puerto Rico. En fin, para el desarrollo
to
económico
sum up
sostenible,
for sustainable economic development.
una invitación a que sean partícipes de esto. No hay
We
duda
need
de que
everyone to participate in this process.
la austeridad implementada por la Junta. No obstante, las políticas fiscales solas no serán suficientes
Fiscal
para
policies per se shall not suffice.
no sea suficiente ni para devolvernos los niveles prepandemia. El servicio a la deuda y otras imposiciones
Debt service and other impositions
de alguna manera sobre nuestra capacidad y agilidad para
are a
implementar
burden on our capacity to implement a lot of the reforms that are necessary.
el intento de eliminar la estructura de incentivos y créditos contributivos existentes sin identificar modelos sustitutos crearía una enorme desestabilización en la industria de manufactura con repercusiones inimaginables. Estos son cambios que solo producirán resultados positivos si se implantan
We
de
need
manera
changes to be implemented responsibly.
la importancia de la implementación de medidas que puedan redundar en
We
una
need
mayor
measures that can inure to the benefit of all,
requiere esfuerzo internacional. No obstante, no pueden implantarse en un vacío de
but they
forma
cannot
aislada.
be implemented at a void in isolation.
Si utilizamos el proceso de reestructuración en el que estamos, no solo para ahorrar, sino
We
para
need to use this restructuring process not only to save,
reales, ágiles,
but
relevantes,
also
y
to have more agile and relevant
habrá servido las eficiencias logradas si no
measures.
invertimos para temperar la fuerza laboral.
And we
al
also
tiempo
need to invest on our workforce.
donde sea fácil hacer negocio, no tenemos que hacerlo todo, pero tenemos que empezar. Podemos
We don't
construir
have to do it all, but we do need to begin with this process.
de colaboración y de ver todo en relación a un plan fiscal y de ahorro. Los invito a pensar que hay que invertir
I
para
invite
lograr
you to think that we need to invest to
tenemos a
achieve
la
these
disposición
goals,
todo el personal del equipo del desarrollo
and all the
económico,
team for economic development is at your disposal to collaborate
donde merece.
within this process.
For the opportunity, and I make me available for any question.
Thank you so much, Secretary Cedre. Do board members have questions for the secretary? I think John Nixon does from. We can't hear you yet, John.
Can you hear me? No?
What's the,
We're hearing him only in the earphone.
Oh, maybe I need to take off the translation just a sec. Is that better?
Still hearing him only in the earphone.
Switch my audio. Okay, just a second.
John, I don't think the issue is you. Give us just a minute here in the auditorium.
Is that better?
Not yet, John. We're still hearing you only through the interpretation.
I think Natalie could ask my question. I think
we
you know-
still can't. Yeah, why don't we,
I think we'll go
why don't we
to-
move to other questions and hopefully we can sort out the audio or the audio problems in the meantime. Antonio, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like first, Mr. Cedar, I want to thank you for your service to Puerto Rico. Our economy truly benefits from having a seasoned business leader like you driving our economic growth policy. And I think it's a real honor to have you serving as Secretary of Economic Development. I do have several questions that I'd like to ask you. Some more general and some more technical, but I'll just go one at a time to just keep the subject separate. First, as you may be aware, the fiscal plan forecasts over a decade of positive surplus years. However, in the latter years of the fiscal plan, we do expect some potential shortfalls. Based on your experience, what are the key strategies of economic growth that we need to implement to ensure that as we come out of bankruptcy, Puerto Rico regains its strength and returns to long-term economic stability? You may answer in Spanish if you like.
Okay. La última vez que yo estuve en una
The last time I
como esta,
was
fue
in a
explicándole a
meeting
una
like
junta
this,
directora
I explained
que
to a
requería
board
crear 5
of
millones de pesos para no
directors
quebrar.
why I needed 5 million
Y
pesos not to
me
go
parece a mí
bankrupt.
que
And
una de las cosas que aprendí
I
a
think
hacer
that one of the things that I learned a long time
en de crisis
was to handle crisis,
se elimina enfocándolo solamente en la reducción.
focusing only in cost reduction.
Si yo voy a soñar
If I'm going to dream
que aspiramos o que debemos aspirar, debe
of
de ser una economía multisectorial.
the economy that we would like, it should be multi-sectorial,
Es una multisectorialidad solamente enfocada en crear negocios.
and we cannot only focus on creating business.
Atienda las tendencias globales y
We
que
need
se
to
dirija
be in
como meta
the same pace as global trends
a un área de desarrollo económico
and geared
que
towards
atienda
economic development
y la desigualdad con responsabilidad. Me explico.
to
Tradicionalmente,
address inequality with responsibility.
la manufactura ha sido quien ha regido el 42% de las
Manufacturing has reached 42% and now it has plunged,
unidades de manufactura de mayor valor. Por eso la
and we
informática,
need manufacturing units of higher value such as IT.
en Santurce hay 2 oficinas de 2 negocios que no voy a mencionar.
There are 2 offices from 2 businesses that I will not mention,
El salario
and they have
mínimo
different amounts of employees.
en esa división es $65,000.
And there is a minimum wage of $65,000 in one of them.
Ese estímulo es el que tenemos que enfocarnos también
That is the
para
kind of
crear,
stimulus that we need
desde el punto de vista de crear riqueza interna, desde el punto de vista en que
to
nuestros
create
ciudadanos
wealth
tengan la oportunidad de moverse a próximos
so that our
niveles como
citizens
niveles
have opportunities.
En esa dirección soy un ácido pensador de crear muchos sectores productivos en el país.
We
Creo
need
que
to
la
create many productive sectors in the country.
Creo que el gobierno debe ser un ente fiscalizador, pero
I believe the
facilitador a la vez.
government must oversee but also facilitate,
Una serie de regulaciones que muchas veces impiden el crecimiento.
because there are many regulations that hamper
Un sistema de
growth.
negocios robusto, que la persona que llega a Puerto Rico pueda establecer un negocio en 48 o en
And we
72
need
horas.
people getting to Puerto Rico to set up a business in 48 or 72 hours.
Muchas gracias, secretario. Mi próxima pregunta,
Thank you, Secretary. My next question
y la razón es que
is the following. I will go back to English.
Offering preferential grants, credits, and preferential tax rates to certain industries, while other local companies pay some of the highest corporate taxes in the world. Furthermore, there's some groups or views that question the return on investment of programs, and I'll be specific, like the film tax credits and their contribution to the overall economy. If you would be kind enough to share with us your view on this issue of grants, incentive grants, tax credits, decrease, and how you believe Puerto Rico should manage these programs, as well as the overall corporate tax structure to ensure sustainable economic growth, and specific to the film industry, what is your view on the value or ROI of the credits program?
Antes de entrar en las consideraciones de un return on investment
Before
analysis,
going into an ROI
entender
analysis, we need to
precisamente
understand precisely
las áreas
the
que pudiera
areas
afectar el no
that
existir ese
could
sector en específico.
be affected if
Yo
that didn't
leí la
exist.
correspondencia que le envió la Junta
I read the
Fiscal
letter
al
sent
secretario Paredes,
by the board to Secretary Paredes.
muy correcta. Sin embargo,
I thought it was quite
los anejos y
correct.
con qué comparan a Puerto Rico, pues sin duda alguna levanté la mano porque ninguna de esas jurisdicciones son comparables.
But none of those jurisdictions are comparable.
Dicho eso,
Having said that,
recientemente en mi negocio de familia abrió una
in
operación.
my family business, we opened operations in Florida,
No le dieron exención contributiva,
and there were no tax exemptions,
pero le dieron el equivalente
for
de
that.
exención contributiva en un
But they
segmento
got
de ayudas de
the same
energía,
amount in other
taxes,
grants
en total.
for
Tenemos que tener mucho
electricity
cuidado,
and
mucho
other
cuidado en esta etapa
items. So we
en
need to
que
be
nos
very
tocamos.
careful at this point.
Una forma todavía no definida de la reforma final contributiva federal en este tema del Global Minimum Tax. De
With the global
alterar
minimum tax, we have to be
cualquier
very
área
careful
en esa dirección porque pudiéramos tener un backlog para atrás.
because this
que nos dé la cara.
could
Dicho
produce a
eso,
backlog.
cine.
Now,
tendrá el
going to the
cine?
film industry,
Que Atlanta está enfocado. ¿Qué tendrá el cine que desarrolló o fue la semilla de
what is it
desarrollo?
about the film industry that
¿Qué
we
tendrá el cine que está tan
have
activo
been
en
focusing
Colombia?
on that? Why is it so active in Colombia,
Ellos sin
in
cambio.
the Dominican Republic?
Yo creo que lo que trae el
I
cine a la
think
mesa
what the film industry brings to the
no solamente
table
el empleo que genera en la película,
is the employment
no es
for
necesariamente
a
la
certain
producción y la
film,
calidad de la película.
not
Genera
for the
algo
production or
tan
quality of the
difícil
film itself.
de valorar.
So it's hard to
Es
assess.
precisamente esos visitantes que nos visitan,
And
que
those
nunca habían venido,
visitors that
dicen,
hadn't
"Oye,
come here
esto es mucho
before
mejor de lo que yo pensaba". Esa película,
might
porque
notice this is
una
much
de las
better
condiciones que yo le
than they
pondría a
thought.
cualquier mecanismo de incentivo es que no,
And
no conformarme con Make in Puerto Rico o Film in Puerto Rico, que tuviese algunas escenas y que se identificara con Puerto Rico.
it would be important for the films to contain certain scenes that can be identified with Puerto Rico.
Sin duda alguna, yo tengo que pensar que
We would need to think
el cine es un negocio
that
bueno para Puerto
the film industry is a good business for Puerto Rico.
Rico. Ahora, yo sí estoy de acuerdo.
And I
Y
do
estoy
agree
viendo con la señora Yaresco mañana y lo cuadramos en esa forma. En no otorgar
that we
ningún
shouldn't
incentivo que
grant
tenga un arroz ahí.
any
Yo no creo- o
incentives
sea, si no tiene un criterio de investment, yo no lo voy a otorgar.
if there is no investment criteria.
Los estudios que tenemos, desde B2A hasta Joaquín Villamil, nos dicen
From
que
B2A
si
to
tú
Joaquín
trabajas
Villamil,
algunas-
we've been said
actividades que no tienen el
that
return on investment,
there are
porque
activities that have no ROI.
hay una estructura que dice que si usted aumenta el CAP de 38 a 100 millones, reduce esa pérdida. Mi llamado a la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal
I
es
call on the board
dialogar precisamente, no solamente con el incentivo de cine,
not only to think about the film
decretos
incentives
de ley 22, hoy ley de inversionistas,
as
con
Decree Law
impuestos
22 and the Investors Law.
con la ley 73. Para eso es que el Departamento de Desarrollo Económico no escatima esfuerzo.
And that's why the Department of Economic Development strives.
Negocio. Puerto Rico es una jurisdicción de buenos impuestos.
Puerto Rico is a jurisdiction with a good tax system,
Tiene que cumplir. Y el que se va a mitad tiene
and
que pagar la
those
cosa que
who
tampoco hemos
leave
hecho en el pasado.
beforehand need to pay.
Thank you, Secretary, and I certainly welcome, as a representative of the board, any interest to work together, and we're happy to do so.
Okay.
I do have one additional question, which again is fairly technical in nature, but I think it's rather relevant. We are facing a significant challenge on a global basis based on the new taxation rules that have been agreed by the most important countries in the world. We do expect, therefore, tax changes in the federal code on whether it's going to be incremental GILTI, potential changes to tax creditability, which may affect laws like 154, and other potential changes. So it's kind of an open question because it's a
Right.
complex subject. But what are your thoughts on these challenges to our competitiveness, and how can we work together between the board and administration to ensure that Puerto Rico achieves structural competitiveness and structural competitive advantages in this new tax reform that we expect to come sometime in the next year or two?
Sí.
Or near future.
Bueno, lo primero que yo creo que es muy importante, nosotros somos un territorio de los Estados Unidos de América, nosotros
The
somos
first
ciudadanos
thing
americanos y nuestros
that I
empleos
need
son
to mention is
americanos.
that we are US
Creo que
citizens and
eso
our
le pone una presión mayor. ¿verdad?
Employments
Porque
are from the US as well.
eso es número uno.
So that's an additional pressure.
Señor director, que el programa de incentivos contributivos que llegó a Puerto
The
Rico en la década del 60,
incentive program that got to Puerto Rico in the 60s,
como yo a través de impuestos bajos reemplazo los costos de flete,
meant
reemplazo los
that
costos de
with
comida,
low
los
taxes,
costos de
we
almacenamiento.
should replace the costs related to
Pero-
freight and others.
You may continue.
Really sorry for that.
Thank you.
Bueno, anyway, a lo que iba, director, es que
Anyway,
el enfoque del
the
Departamento de
focus
Desarrollo Económico,
on
si yo viniera
of
aquí,
the Department
a-
of Economic Development
enfocaría en buscar empleo,
would be
dar
to look
incentivos
for jobs,
y en
incentives,
crear algún tipo de actividad
and
que
create
pudiera
some
promover.
kind of activity.
Primero que nada, Puerto Rico tiene que
Above
embarcarse
all, Puerto
en un
Rico
proceso de competitividad real.
needs to
Cuando lleguemos a ese
embark
punto,
in a process
establecerlo a
to
través
become
de
really
documentos.
competitive.
Ocurre con el tema de la quiebra y la deuda de Puerto Rico. No se
The same
resolvió
with the
hasta
bankruptcy and the debt of
desde
Puerto Rico.
2016.
They started in 2016 and it's still not solved.
Yo creo que es fair que sea así. Pues lo mismo, si nosotros vamos a cambiar el enfoque de una jurisdicción de
If we're
bajos
going to
impuestos
change
para
the
la factura
focus
instantánea,
of a low tax jurisdiction,
vamos a buscar las sustituciones.
we
de
need to look
manera
for substitutes,
no desvistamos un santo para vestir el otro. Si miramos
because
el código
otherwise we're going to fix something and then fix another thing.
textil, gasolina, farmacéutica, ahora medical devices, aeroespacial, pero quitamos una y ponemos otra. La idea
But
es mantener el ecosistema
we
lo
are
suficientemente
removing a problem and adding another one.
ser relevantes a nivel global. El Global Minimum Tax, que es lo único que por lo menos está en el escenario que posiblemente se apruebe para 2023, nos pone en igualdad de situaciones con Singapur, con Irlanda. Y yo les pregunto a ustedes.
Let me
¿ustedes
ask
creen
you,
que
do you
Irlanda
believe
nos va a dar incentivos por otro lado que
that
no sean
Singapore or Ireland will give you incentives other than taxes?
taxes? Eso es matemática 101.
It's
Así que,
math
como
101.
nosotros no tenemos esos incentivos ahora, como nosotros
So
podemos
since we don't have
ofrecer
those incentives
adicionales,
right now and we cannot
este
offer those
servicio,
incentives,
el honor de dirigir gracias al señor gobernador. Lo que le pide es tiempo para la transición.
it doesn't work. We need time for transition,
Y estoy seguro que el señor gobernador me respalda en eso.
and I'm sure the governor will agree.
10 años donde podamos movernos del lado de la realidad que tenemos hoy día.
We need
Del lado
to
de-
go from a reality
y
to
esto
another
está
thing.
hablado innumerables veces. De hecho, ya hay un proyecto bastante adelantado sustitutivo en esa dirección.
We have,
Porque nosotros de este lado no
there
hemos
is a
podido-
process for substitution there,
Estamos esperando ciertos cambios.
and we need
reformas que son
to wait
importantes para
for these
definir
reforms that are important for our future
la competitiva del Departamento de Desarrollo
to
Económico
become
hoy.
competitive.
Si no somos competitivos,
If we are not competitive,
hoy día, cerremos la puerta y no
we can
dejemos
close the door.
Es importante que la Junta entienda esto.
And it's important for the board to understand that there's a social cost of federal programs. The social cost would be massive unemployment.
Americano. Y si no tenemos empleo, podemos coger un avión mañana y nos vamos por Orlando.
If we don't have a job, we can just jump on a flight and go to Orlando.
I look forward to work with you and the governor on this
Mucho gusto.
subject as we come out of bankruptcy. Once we are done with Commonwealth bankruptcy and PREPA bankruptcy, certain economic development needs to be front and center
Muy bien.
in our objectives. Thank you.
And I just wanted to make a comment really rather than a question, and that is a comment to thank you for the work that you've done on consolidating DDEC. You're one of the few agencies that's been successful in consolidating back offices, which is really one of the major priorities in the fiscal plan to make Puerto Rico's government as efficient as possible. So we very much appreciate everything you've done in that respect. And you're really a model, I think, for the government as a whole. Governor, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm fine. I thank the secretary for his very comprehensive presentation and his responsiveness to the questions that were asked of him.
Gracias, gobernador.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Secretary
Thank you.
Cedre, and thank you again for everything that you're doing. We're going to take about a 5-minute break because
Okay.
we're having issues with the live streaming. So we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll move to the next discussion. I'd like to welcome Fermín Fontanes, Executive Director of P3, the Public-Private Partnership. Mr. Fontanes has leveraged his extensive background as an environmental, energy, and land use attorney to great effect with stints at prestigious law firms such as O'Neill and Borges, where he has advised clients about PROMESA's Title V process, and at McConnell Valdez. Previous to his current role as Executive Director of the P3 Authority, Mr. Fontanes served as the agency's legal advisor. Welcome, and we look forward to hearing you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all. Good morning, Governor, and good morning, members of the board. Good morning, Ms. Jaresco, Executive Director, and good morning, General Counsel, Mr. Alcuri. Thank you, everybody, for having me here today and giving me the opportunity to present to you what we're doing at the P3 Authority and how the P3 Authority works as a vehicle for economic development and has done it in the past and what we're aiming to do towards the future. Okay, that's not my presentation.
It's the wrong
That's
video.
the wrong presentation.
I like it though. You can play it. I've seen it and I like it.
But the music was good.
The music was good, but I'm not gonna steal somebody else's show. Well, while they set up the video again, I'll give you a briefing of what I'm gonna be speaking about today. The P3 Authority, since it was established in 2009, has served as a vehicle for economic development. We have successfully accomplished multiple P3s that have been recognized nationally and internationally for their success. And we continue to work towards different projects and goals that with that reputation and that credibility. I think we have spoken today about the importance of having credibility in the market as we move towards improving the economic development on the island. And the P3 Authority has gained that credibility by closing several deals that have been recognized. And as we continue our new processes and our new projects, we have seen that credibility paid up in the number of participants in our processes and the number of requests to participate and intrigue in what we're doing. So I don't know if the presentation is ready or should I click here before I move on? Okay. So let me see. That slide has an embedded video in it. If somebody can press play over there at the visual table, because if I press play here, it will skip to the next slide. Excuse me. No, we're gonna do the video at the end while they'll fix the issue. So I'll continue with the presentation. Okay. So what I'm going to be discussing today is going over an overview of the projects that we have done in the past, the ones that are currently in our pipeline, the ones that we are evaluating, and then go over potential opportunities for future projects through our unsolicited proposal mechanism under Act 29. So if we go chronologically from the authority was established in 2009. The first project was in 2011. It's the Metro Pistas toll roads concession. It was the first P3 closing in 2011 for PR 52 and PR 5. It was a $1.1 billion transaction. It's a 50-year concession. It was a 40-year concession originally, and it was extended for an additional 10 years with an additional payment of $115 million in 2016. This has been a recognized project. It's those who live in Puerto Rico and have traveled through our roads and can tell the difference between what the PR 22 looks like when you compare it to PR 52, can testify as to the benefits of improving that infrastructure and how that PR 22 corridor has developed economically since 2011 to what we see today. If you look at municipalities like Dorado, what it is today, what it was before, we can also see in the numbers from Metro Pistas, the accident rates, the amount of traffic that goes through the road, how it has changed through the 10 years. This is the 10-year anniversary of that project. So then in 2013, the next major transaction that was closed was the lease agreement for the Luis Muñoz Marin International Airport, another well-recognized transaction in the P3 world. It was a $650 million essentially down payment in 2013, and then the first 5 years of that agreement, the government of Puerto Rico received an annual $2.5 million payment. Then from year 5 through the next 10 years, it's a 5% revenue share. And then the last 10 years of the concession, it's a 10% revenue share. Again, this is a what we call in the P3 world a full P3, where the Autostar came in. It was a consortium of two entities. They took over through a lease agreement mechanism over the airport, and they have the responsibility to do the CapEx infrastructure projects, manage the airport, and run it. And we have seen through the metrics from Autostar how this has translated to an increase in air traffic, air offers, and we continue to see that improvement and making sure that they continue to do that work. The most recent projects that we have closed were in 2020. The first one is the operation and maintenance agreement with Luma for the transmission and distribution system of the Electric Power Authority. This is the first step in the three major steps of the transformation of PREPA, the second one being the generation, and the third one or in parallel coming out of bankruptcy. All topics that have been discussed here today. This is PREPA is the largest public utility in the United States. So this was a major transaction. It's a 15-year agreement, over $1 billion. And we are looking for Luma, that they have commenced operations officially since June 1st, to not only transform the way the organization is working today, but also help us in managing the federal funds and rebuilding and reconstructing the grid to where we need it to be, to provide that stable, reliable, sustainable service that we're looking for and that we need to continue with the economic development in Puerto Rico. The latest project that was closed was also in 2020. It is the operation and maintenance of the Maritime Transportation Authority. Is the ferry system that goes from the Ceiba to the islands of Vieques and Culebra and San Juan and Cataño. This was closed in late October 2020. We're in the middle of the transition year, well, at the end of the transition year, and by the first quarter of next year, the HMS ferries should have taken over the entire operation of the Maritime Transportation Authority. This has also been working successfully. HMS has been taking control of the operations bit by bit throughout the transition year, and by the beginning of next year, they should have taken control of the entire operation. It's a 23-year concession, about $751 million for the entire 23-year concession. The first 3 years are of phase 1 transition period where they do the operation and maintenance of the system. The second phase, after year 3, they take full control, similar to the concession that we have with Aerostar at the Luis Muñoz Marin International Airport. So now I'm going to speak about the projects that we have on our pipeline, the ones that are already in the procurement process, and most of them are at the final stages where we have selected preferred bidders and are on finalizing negotiations. The first one is the modernization of the San Juan cruise terminals. This is a project that's similar to what we have in the Luis Muñoz Marin International Airport, but it's focused on the cruise terminals of the San Juan Bay, in particular, Piers 1, 3, 5, 11 to 14, and Pan American 1 and 2. Here, this is a design, build, finance, operate, and maintain, but at the same time, we are leveraging the use of federal funds as from the part of the government to get the most out of the transaction for the benefit of the people of Puerto Rico. The private party, which we're negotiating with, will come in to revitalize and restructure and reorganize the entire, I would say, operational mechanism that the Ports Authority has done historically in the way that they manage the ports from a market standpoint. Not only do they need to do the investment in the CapEx, and because the infrastructure of the ports is in dire conditions, but historically, the way that the cruise operation has taken place in Puerto Rico has been dealing directly with the different cruise lines. We're now moving to an open access regime where we are, instead of having particular piers for particular entities, we'll have it will be based on volume. The availability of the piers will be based on the amount of ships or passengers that the different cruise lines are bringing in to incentivize more travel and to maximize the use of those piers when the existing cruise lines are not using them. Obviously, as with all our P3s, we respect existing contracts, and everything that's being contracted will continue to be respected throughout the term of the concession. The other large project that we have now is the operation and maintenance of the thermal generation facilities. This is what I mentioned before, the second step on the transformation of PREPA. We're doing a procurement, looking for one or more operators to manage the legacy generation assets or fleet of the Electric Power Authority. We're, I would say, fairly advanced in this project as well, where we have qualified 7 proponents that have participated. And this, to me, is an example of the credibility that we have gained in the market by closing successful transactions. And the board is well aware of this. When we first began with the transmission and distribution project, we received only 5 proponents or qualifications, statement of qualifications for that project. In this one, we received 15 and we shortlisted this group. As you can see, we have well-recognized operators from across the world that are participating in this process. And we hope to close this transaction at some time early next year. We also have different smaller projects, but that are also ongoing procurement in different fields. This is in the higher education field. We have a design build, finance, operate and maintain project for a student housing facility in the Mayagüez University of Puerto Rico Mayagüez campus. Here, the private entity will come to do what we're looking at, housing and student center to try to revitalize the campus inside the University of Mayagüez to offer opportunities to students, not only from Puerto Rico that go to Mayagüez to educate themselves, but to provide opportunities from students from abroad to come in and have student housing in Mayagüez where they can stay as they move in their careers. We have a preferred proponent in this project as well that we're negotiating with. Now I'm going to discuss the projects that we are evaluating for consideration to see if they're feasible or desirable to undergo future P3s. The first project that we have, which is public policy of this administration, is to do a desirability and convenience study for the regional airports of the Puerto Rico Ports Authority. The Puerto Rico Ports Authority has 9 regional airports that need the benefit of having an experienced operator to get into compliance and manage and maximize the use of those airports. We're conducting a study to try to increase the operational and maintenance of those airports and to maximize their use. We hope to have that study out for the market at the beginning of next year. Before I continue with this section, the desirability and convenience study is a mechanism that we use at the P3 authority to evaluate projects to determine if they are viable for P3 projects. Not all projects are viable P3s. Some may be handled better by the partnering entity because of their size or their benefits, or because of the comprehensiveness of our procurement process, which is a long competitive process that's designed more for large scale projects. Notwithstanding what we have done in the past and continue to do is that when a partnering entity from the government of Puerto Rico has an interest in a project, we conduct the desirability and convenience study. And if we determine that it's better suited for that partnering entity to run that procurement process, we assist them as they do that procurement, and we allow them or provide our technical expertise so that they conduct it. Right now, we are in the process of finalizing this study. Another project that we are considering is from the Department of Treasury. The Department of Treasury has call center and operations that are aimed to capture some of the outstanding debt that is out there, and they do not have the capacity or the mechanisms to not even gain or I would say respond to 80% of the volume of calls that they receive. They're looking for a private partner to come in, take over that operation and maximize the use of that operation to try to recover some of that outstanding debt that continues to accumulate, and they don't have the mechanism or the efficiency to address it. This is not designed as a mechanism for collections. It's really just the operations that the Department of Treasury currently has, where people call in to the call centers for information and to try to get advice on how they can cancel their debt or make their payments. So it's more of of a voluntary type of operation. But once those calls come into the Department of Treasury, more than 80% of those citizens that are calling end up paying their debt after they get the orientation and the advice on how that process goes. Increasing that capacity could result in capturing additional funds that are out there that are not being captured because of those inefficiencies. So we're doing a desirability and convenience study. This has been done in the US at the federal level, and we're trying to see if we can replicate that effort in the Department of Treasury in Puerto Rico. Another one that we're working on is the modernization of the digital infrastructure owned by the Puerto Rico Highway and Transportation Authority. PRHTA owns a lot of telecommunication towers, right-of-ways, broadband, and across the island. This is an opportunity, and it's a P3 model that has been done in the US consistently, and there is a lot of market for it. PRHTA, which acknowledging that this is not their I would say, major priority right now, is looking to externalize all of that infrastructure and looking for private investors to come in, improve that infrastructure and maximize the use of the existing infrastructure and right-of-ways that PRHTA owns. We're also working with PRHTA on a desirability and convenience study for the remaining toll roads for PR 20, 52, 53, and 66. We're looking at the possibility of doing a similar type of concession that we did with PR 22 and PR 5. This is also in process, and we hope to have a draft coming out very soon. Finally, this is a smaller project that we have, but we included it here as well as a example of other additional opportunities that could be worked through a P3 model or a P3 process. The Camuy River Cave Park is a natural resources, a Department of Natural Resources park that has been underutilized. It was closed for many years after Hurricane Maria. It just reopened. There is an interest in the market of coming in to try to operate and maintain that facility and maximize its resources. And we're working on preparing a desirability and convenience study for the Camuy River Cave Park. Opportunities going forward. As we look at what we have out there, there's obviously, we know that Puerto Rico is moving towards renewable energy. We know that there's also new alternative generation out there that can be included. So the Act 29 has a mechanism for receiving unsolicited proposals. This is where the private entity identifies a service, an activity, or a process that is currently being performed by the government of Puerto Rico, but they believe that they could perform better, or that they have an idea of how to maximize that service or that process. And they come in and they present to us their ideas. We evaluate whether we think it's feasible and to the benefit of the people of Puerto Rico. And if it is, we accept that proposal and begin or commence a process with the desirability and convenience study. Opportunities that we know and we have received interest, and we have identified that our potential P3s are asset recycling. As Secretary Sidre mentioned, there's a possibility of trying to bring in private investors to look at existing assets to improve and make the investment needed for us to maximize those assets. Smart cities, solid waste I think, is an incredible opportunity for P3s out there. It's a major problem for us on the island that we're trying to fix. Hospitals and healthcare are also opportunities that are available. New generation, as I mentioned, and education. And now we're going to see if we can play the video to close, and then we can take any questions. This was supposed to be the interview. So the
Thank you so much.
thank you. The presentation flows much better if I start with the video, but
I was thinking better late than never. It's a terrific video. Do we have questions or comments from the board? Andrew?
Well, thank you very much. I thought both the video and your oral presentation are very, very impressive. I'm wondering if you can talk about, in addition to successes you've had, what are the challenges you face going forward? And what could the board do to help facilitate those challenges?
well, I think, at least from my point of view, our biggest challenge is always misinformation and trying to communicate what we're doing and what those benefits are for the people. There is a stigma out there to what we're doing, but I think people forget what the results are once the project has been done. I think when you look at the airport and PR22, the results speak for themselves. We just started with Luma, where we had a rough beginning, but we're starting to see those improvements. These are long-term, I would say, legacy projects that are aimed to transform, and that we have to work with that information so that people understand. You need to be patient. These are long-term projects that are for the benefit of all of us, and acknowledging as government that there are certain areas that are better performed or goals that are better accomplished through this type of agreements. It's a key first step, and the governor has been emphatic in recognizing the importance of that public policy and pushing that policy forward. If we look across the world, in particular in the US with the new infrastructure bills and what's coming up, we're moving to a P3 world and a type of P3 structure. And we have an opportunity here as a jurisdiction that has led or paved the way literally in those type of projects to take advantage for using that mechanism as an economic development. So I think educating people about the benefits and why we're doing this is the most challenging aspect, I think, of what we're doing.
We have other questions or comments? Justin?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Ramirez.
Justin.
It's a great presentation, really important. On this slide with regarding the legacy generation assets,
Yes,
that I just wanted to clarify, those are the legacy generation assets, and it's not the sort of the upcoming Genco RFP. That one would be separate and still in the works.
no, this is to operate, it's to operate and maintain Genco, the new
Okay.
structure. So it will be the existing legacy fleet. So Palo Seco, San Juan, Aguirre, Mayagüez.
Along with new generation facilities.
No, not new
Okay.
generation will be handled separately. This will be the existing ones until they are taken out of operation and eventually dismantled in accordance with the integrated resource plan.
And so just as Luma now is sort of doing the transmission piece of it, this new Genco company, what's going on with that RFP and what do you think the timeline is for that?
We expect to have a selection by early next year, probably the
Okay.
first quarter of next year,
Okay.
for sure.
And one more question, more comment, on the airports. I've helped my home state, some of the regional airports, just get access to FAA funds that
Yes.
accumulate. And I presume these 9 airports have access to that. And,
Yes.
and I just want to offer whatever I can do to help in that
Thank you.
regard. I wanna
Thank you.
help. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Other questions from the board? Governor, did you have any comments or questions?
As I did with Manuel Sidre, I thank Fermin because his presentation was also quite comprehensive, straightforward, and he's being very responsive to your questions. So I'm proud. I'm proud of the team.
And I'll just echo that, having been able to be on 22 and to go through the airport, and I had the opportunity to go to Kamui River Cave Park over the summer. These are all great projects, and they've all been very, very well done. So thank you.
Thank you,
for what
Mr.
you're
Chairman.
doing as well. Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
again. Up next, we're excited to hear from Roderick Miller from Invest Puerto Rico. Mr. Miller was appointed to head Invest Puerto Rico in 2019 and has a strong background working on economic developments initiatives all across the United States. Before coming to Puerto Rico, he was president and CEO of Ascendant Global, a consultancy with operations in Detroit, Medellin, Colombia, and New Orleans that's focused on promoting job creation and private investment. Welcome, and we very much look forward to learning from you and hearing from you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, distinguished members of the board, Chairman Skill, Executive Director Jaresco, Honorable Governor. It's really a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to share the work that Invest Puerto Rico has been doing to advance the economy of Puerto Rico. And so a few things that we'll share today. We're going to talk about what the achievements have been today, some of the current efforts that are underway, competitiveness considerations, which is a big factor. So we know that while we're charged with bringing in jobs and investment today, it's absolutely essential that we build the foundation needed to secure kind of a strong economy over the long term. So not just bringing in what we can today based on our competitive position today, but ideally that tomorrow we'd be stronger and be able to attract more investment. And moving forward, how the fiscal board can support. So this is important context. Thank you. This is important context. When we started in 2019, the first thing that we did was establish a promotional plan. This promotional plan, this is a practice that 97% of economic development organizations undertake to really make sure that we're very targeted and specific about who we talk to, what we sell, and how we ensure that that ultimately results in positive jobs, quality jobs, as well as investment for the island. That assessment, a few things really emerged. One is that there was a big opportunity to focus on knowledge services, Why knowledge services? You're talking your export services, your technology, professional services, finance and insurance. These sectors, by and large, you're talking about smart people and computers. So the idea would be that we could shrink the gestation period for deals. Typical manufacturing deal takes 1.5 years, 2 years to get done. And it's also incredibly taxing on the infrastructure. So we focused on knowledge services with the hope that we could bring hundreds of small companies, 20, 30, 40, 50 jobs, which would provide more economic stability over the long term. Of course, we didn't anticipate at that time the COVID pandemic, which was, in addition to being challenging, also presented a unique opportunity because Puerto Rico was uniquely positioned to serve as in response to the challenges related to the pharmaceutical, medical device sectors, supply chain issues as well. And we've also found that that's also true in the case of defense industry. So those are the sectors we focused on. And one of the things that was important was to shift the message around how we position the market of Puerto Rico. Well, Rod, what are you talking about? Well, of course, as we know, Puerto Rico has some of the most aggressive incentives, which are a very important part of our value proposition, but that's not the value proposition. The value proposition is that we're number 2 in terms of women engineers in the entire United States. We're number 6 in the world in terms of STEM graduates or STEM professionals and the concentration of STEM professionals. And then we're also a market that has a bilingual population. And within 35 by 100 square miles, what you normally find is that economic development is concentrated in one city. So the assumption is normally, oh, all the economic development is in San Juan. That's not true. We have economic development across the island of Puerto Rico and access to skilled labor and knowledge resources across the island, 88 universities in 35 by 100 square miles. That's the value proposition. So we've focus from a messaging perspective on shifting the conversation to really how do we add true value so that we can be at the top of the value chain versus the bottom of the value chain. And of course, we're telling that message through a variety of channels. Our business development team focuses on direct relationships with C-suite executives and making sure that these executives understand what Puerto Rico has to offer. It's a long-term relationship of trust that we're trying to develop so that we get multiple deals, not just 1 or 2. And then, of course, our website, we just went through a rebranding of our website to provide information. We do digital and print, and as well, we participated in over 70 conferences over the last 1.5 years. From a geographic perspective, again, it's all about targeting. So what we found is that from the US perspective, the Northeast really represents the best, one of the best opportunities. There's a high knowledge or at least awareness that Puerto Rico exists and what it is, but there hasn't been a strong business case historically entrenched in the last, say, 10 years, 10, 15 years. So we've established a business council in New York, but we pretty much service from DC up to Boston with that business council, working with local business leaders to make sure they understand our value proposition. And we've converted them to salespeople. And we've done the same thing as well on the West Coast in Silicon Valley. So that's the context in which we've engaged in this work. So the achievements to date, about 1,200 new businesses to the island, 8,500 jobs committed, over 330 million in capital investment, with an average payroll of about 60,000 jobs. So we've been very aggressive in selling the island and making sure that there is a clear understanding of what the value is, and that these are long-term jobs versus a shot in the arm. So let's talk a little bit about our current efforts. Awareness building. Number 1, we've got a story to tell. How do we tell that story in a way that resonates? And so normally I say, my name is Rod Miller, I'm with Invest Puerto Rico. And I talk to business leaders and they say, pobrecito, poor thing, how are things going? And I get this sad look. And I say, do you realize that we're the top biopharma manufacturing facility in the United States with 14 billion in exports? We have to shift the conversation. So a lot of our awareness building and marketing efforts is really about tilling the ground, if you will, so that there's more receptiveness on the part of executives and investors about the island, because there's so many, only part of the story's been told, and we want to make sure the full story is told. The second piece is lead generation. We try to build a quality pipeline of projects. So at any given time, we've got 600 to 700 leads that are in our system. But we're probably working actively 50 to 60 projects. So that's around the norm of projects that we can actually manage. And the others, we are vetting them for impact, for indirect impact as well, for fit in terms of the target sectors, for how catalytic. So we look at all of these factors to determine what are the best opportunities and how do we generate a robust pipeline and ultimately close on it. Product improvement, from a product improvement perspective, it's clear that we're Puerto Rico and that is a product. But if we're selling a notepad and everyone's buying an iPad, then we've got another challenge. So we're very cognizant that we've got to figure out how do we position our product to be better. And so we do a lot of work in that space. And then ultimately stakeholder engagement. There's no one organization, no one institution that can in and of itself drive economic development. And so we recognize that we work within an ecosystem. So we're constantly working with the governor, with the Department of Economic Development, but we're also working with private nonprofits such as the Chambers of Commerce and others so that there's a smooth transition. So when a client begins to consider Puerto Rico, we try to offer a turnkey experience so that they have a soft landing in the market. So let's dig a little bit deeper into this awareness building. So we launched IPR's new brand and major advertising campaign, Game Changers Welcome Home, about a month ago. This campaign is an aggressive effort to ensure that in every major market across the country, that there's a high level of awareness around our business case, that we are beautiful beaches and beautiful people, but we're much more than that. And so that Game Changers campaign really tries to figure out how do we engage top C-level executives. It was facilitated by a $6.8 million investment in terms of CDBG DR funds. And so that's, you may see us in the JFK airport if you go there, Boston's airport, Silicon Valley, San Francisco's airport. We've been very aggressive, Forbes magazine and others. We're telling Puerto Rico's story and we're trying to make sure that it's heard around the country and around the globe. We've launched a new website and we're leveraging pending ARPA funding to further promote marketing of Puerto Rico. From a lead generation perspective, we really try to be targeted in our selling. So we had 25 trade shows just over the last year. We've got these business councils, but on an international basis, what we're seeing is, and as someone mentioned earlier, the minimum global tax. You know, as that moves forward, and if Puerto Rico is included, we know that Europe, we're going to have to really hunker down in Europe because the value proposition as vis-a-vis the U.S. The value proposition vis-a-vis the US will go down. So we will have to be much more aggressive in Europe as GILTI moves forward, because we believe that the European market is just as big as the US in terms of opportunities for Puerto Rico. We've not been able to really kind of turn the corner there because of COVID over the last year and a half, but we're continuing to see a steady stream of opportunities out of Europe. We just got back from the Medica conference in Germany about a month ago, and there continues to be high interest in the medical device sector out of Germany, for example. We're harnessing a variety of tools for our lead generation. So we use a lot of AI platforms, both Salesforce, PitchBook, and LinkedIn Sales Navigator, to identify companies that should be in Puerto Rico. We've got what we call the Goliath list, which are companies that we've done deep due diligence because we try to take a consultative approach. So we're not just doing a shotgun, reaching out to every company. We're trying to say, what are the companies that strategically not only provide quality jobs, but actually shift the competitive position, make our story much more interesting. And so that's the way we go about selling. We're also working diligently on real estate. Real estate continues to be a hurdle in terms of transparency in that sector. So we've worked with a group called Red Atlas to develop a platform that will provide much more transparency in the industrial real estate sector, as well as comparative comps. With that, I believe there is a video. If we could play the video, that would be great.
We welcome the free thinkers, the innovators who sense opportunities even where others can't. Those who could live anywhere, but choose to go where they could build something new. Innovative solutions, groundbreaking work, big ambitions. We welcome all of these in Puerto Rico. We have an ecosystem of partners ready to support your vision. A highly educated bilingual workforce eager to grow with you. Cutting-edge broadband and 5G infrastructure. And smart tax incentives that let you take bolder steps. World-leading companies already call Puerto Rico home. Technological innovations are driving the island's energy transformation. And great advancements in clinical research are helping people live longer, healthier lives. For those leading the way forward, our doors are open. Game changers, welcome home.
Thank you. Game changers, welcome home. What does that really talk about? It's the work that you all are engaged in. It's the work that we're engaged in. How do we actually establish a new floor, recognizing the opportunity that Puerto Rico has in front of it in terms of the large capital investment that's being made not only by the federal government, but companies that are finding it as a place for innovators and young people that are moving there. And so Puerto Rico has this energy, and that campaign really aimed to capture that energy and tell the story that this is a place for innovative business leaders to establish their new opportunities. And so from a product improvement perspective, while the video and the ads and the other work really tills the ground, the question is, how can we actually improve the product and so that we can close more deals? So there are a few things that we've been working on. Logistics continues to be absolutely essential. So we've worked very closely on doing an air logistics study with the Department of Commerce. And we're excited about kind of the progress in that space. We're reaching out to carriers to try and figure out how do we increase cargo capacity in Puerto Rico's market. We're working with BDEC on the single business portal for incentives applicants, and also on improving data availability. A lot of that work is around how do we actually ensure that there's a turnkey user experience so that would-be investments don't get sidetracked by a process. And we want the process to be as turnkey and as smooth as possible. We've got specialized committees in logistics, 5G / Internet of Things. We're one of only 4 centers of excellence in the 5G in the country. So you've got us, Texas, Indiana, and Hawaii. And we are the center of excellence around 5G technology, specifically focused on the pharmaceutical sector as well as logistics. We created a Talent in Puerto Rico profile to provide an understanding of the workforce. The #1 driver of investment decisions by companies is access to really smart, capable people. Puerto Rico produces those in droves. Essential to our long-term viability is going to be retention of more of the talent that we create. Also making sure that there are more pathways for new talent to enter the market. And so we're also leveraging $4 million of the $10 million in ARPA funds to support talent initiatives and asset research studies to develop more innovation on the island. And then stakeholder engagement perspective. So I've mentioned several times that we work within an ecosystem. We work very closely, not only with the gubernatorial administration and the Department of Commerce, but we also work very closely with municipalities. Many of the municipalities in Puerto Rico have not had a lot of experience in terms of foreign direct investment attraction. So a lot of our efforts have been on how do we actually increase the capacity of these municipalities to work with us and be good partners so that we can have a greater likelihood of closing deals. That's a vital piece of our stakeholder engagement. We also work, of course, closely, as I mentioned, with the chambers of commerce, the Parallel 18s, the science trusts of the world, because there are specific assets that we have to leverage. We take an asset-based approach to development. So it's not just a question of selling Puerto Rico and selling incentives. It's that we have deep assets and partners that can allow businesses to be more profitable in Puerto Rico over the long term than other markets. Let's dig into the competitiveness considerations for just a moment. Real estate availability. So one of the things that we found is that there weren't many commercial brokers on the island from a real estate perspective. So there were only a few, and many of them were not as transparent as we would have liked for them to be about what it cost, about other information. And so to fix that, we've worked with a group called Red Atlas, and it'll be the first MLS type platform on the island so that there's more transparency so that when investors come, they can really figure out how to invest smartly and what the options for real estate are. From an availability of skilled labor perspective, Puerto Rico has great knowledge assets in the universities. We work very closely with all of them. And for the most part, we don't really struggle on the skilled labor side. Where we do struggle though, which is becoming a bit of a snowball, is the question of software coders, and that's a global problem. But in the last year, I'd say we probably lost 2 or 3 deals because we couldn't show that we had the amount of software coders. And so we've been working closely with the Holberton School. We've been working closely with Politecnica and some of the other institutions on the island to figure out how do we create a bigger pipeline of software and coding talent, and as well as how do we tell the story to those of that profile in the states that would potentially consider moving to Puerto Rico. So that's going to be a continuing body of work. Logistics, we've already talked about. Energy. While Invest Puerto Rico is not playing in the energy space as it relates to the bigger PREPA issues, we do have an energy committee that consists of over 40 private companies that are providing alternative energy solutions. And what we've been very successful at for private sector enterprises that are major users of energy, we've been able to partner them in many cases, help them find partners of other providers so that they could have redundancy, resiliency, and the type of system that they ultimately need. That's helpful in a couple of things. It gives the confidence that's needed to the private investors and companies that we're bringing. But it also drives more capital investment into the market, which is always a good thing. And then last, tax and incentives implication. While we've highlighted other competitiveness levers that are absolutely essential, it's going to be important that we continue to recognize that we're in a competitive, a global battle for jobs, and that the incentives are a critical part of what we have to offer of the whole story. So we don't think it would be wise to abandon the incentives in Puerto Rico altogether. In closing, there are a few observations that I think are absolutely essential to underscore. First one is that COVID represented a shift in the global economy. So around the globe, we're finding companies or markets are really trying to figure out what do they do. What was good for Puerto Rico in this case is that we were already in the middle of doing the work because of the work that you all have led and the work of us and others. We were already trying to figure out how do we shift in Puerto Rico. The advantage that gave us is while others during the pandemic really said, what do we do now? Puerto Rico was really able to accelerate. It was really able to accelerate in terms of the pharmaceutical, the medical device, the defense industry stuff. That's a big piece of the value there. Number two, another observation is that we've got a lot of work to do in terms of our marketing from a business development perspective. So while people know us from a tourism perspective, and I go to Puerto Rico and they say, well, tourism, and tourism is a great part of our economy. Most of the business leaders don't know about Puerto Rico from a business perspective. And so we're trying to shift perceptions, and that's going to be an ongoing body of work. The challenges that Puerto Rico has weren't created overnight, so the solutions aren't going to happen overnight. However, we're seeing continued uptick in terms of the ability to start to address those. The third point is talent is everything. And so from a talent perspective, we've got to make sure that there are quality investments in Puerto Rican people and workforce training and other tools to make sure that we can compete in the global talent game. How can the FOMB support? Number one, serve as ambassadors of the Puerto Rico brand and spread the word of the new narrative of Puerto Rico, that this is a place that's changing the game and that game changers are welcome here. Number two, lean on Invest Puerto Rico as a strategic thought partner and a connector to resources that can further advance the island's transformation while our job at the core of it is a sales job in terms of bringing new jobs and investment, that's not just a sales role. There are numerous implications across the kind of the competitiveness landscape that we want to be able to participate in the conversation and provide a perspective based on what we're hearing from business leaders. Number three, funnel new investment opportunities to invest Puerto Rico. We're always ready and willing and able to work with companies to help them have a successful transition to Puerto Rico. And then last but not least is this facilitation of competitiveness initiative to solidify Puerto Rico's position. When we did our deeper analysis, we found that every dollar invested in Invest Puerto Rico resulted in a direct fiscal impact of $14 to the bottom line, and then about $64 in direct returns in terms of capital investment in the marketplace. With that, I'll stop and be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Doing a lot of very exciting things as well, and appreciate your laying them out. I have a quick initial question, and that is, since the context here is we hope and think that Puerto Rico is on the cusp of coming out of bankruptcy and moving forward with a much, much lower debt burden. Does this affect your work, and does this affect businesses coming to Puerto Rico? Is anybody waiting to see more certainty in the economic landscape? I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Every conversation we have, people are, because government provides stability. At the end of the day, that's the biggest thing that government can do for companies is provide stability. So us coming out of the bankruptcy is a major message that we need to promote, and we need to elevate the companies. Probably 80% of the companies, 80 to 90% of the companies we talk to ask us about Puerto Rico's fiscal position because they want to be certain that if they move to the island, they're going to get the services that they would expect government to be able to provide. And so this is a major milestone for the island, and I'm glad that it's happening.
Thank you. Other questions from on the board? Folks want to ask Mr. Miller?
It's just a very brief comment. Actually, again, thank you. And this has been a very impressive presentation on your part. But I think, I mentioned the word pivot. Once this bankruptcy is behind us, we need to change the conversation. We cannot continue talking about fiscal challenges. No offense to CPAs, but if you're running a company, even running the government of Puerto Rico, you cannot be talking like a controller because you're not going to be attracting any investment. You're not going to be attractive. Puerto Rico is attractive. And we should be talking about the potential we have in the manufacturing sector, sophisticated manufacturing sector, in the technology field, in our professionals. And we should be talking about the fact that this is a government of law and order, that it honors contracts. When we talk about incentives, we better be careful about tax exemption decrees that the government has issued. Walking away from those would give the message to the world that our word, the word of the government of Puerto Rico, is not worth much. You need to be true to your word. You need to be true to your commitments. And you should be, yes, promoting Puerto Rico in terms of our productivity, our skilled labor, recognizing the areas in which we need to do better, but we need to change the conversation. Once this bankruptcy is behind us, it is time to focus on economic development for the long run. And the next one, as I believe Justin Peterson mentioned, is PREPA. It's critical. We do the same with PREPA. We wrap up the couple of public companies that are left to be restructured so that we put the fiscal house in order, which was what PROMESA was all about. And then we pivot and we simply ensure that the government facilitates the creation of business, that we talk about the private sector of Puerto Rico as opposed to the government of Puerto Rico, and that we empower those who can create jobs and create new wealth in Puerto Rico as we should. I'm sorry, I said it was going to be a brief comment, but I get excited when I hear about the pluses as opposed to the minuses. And there's so much to talk about Puerto Rico. It's about time we start doing it. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
And
you.
I'll just say, to the governor's point, Puerto Rico is not it's not difficult to sell to businesses. Once we share the real value proposition of the people and of the assets, it becomes a very easy conversation. Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot of wonderful information in this presentation. I could go through a few of the things, but I'll just comment. I mean, I really appreciate the governor's comment about time to pivot, the word pivot. And I really appreciated your repeated reference to creating a turnkey user experience, which I think is really crucial for bringing businesses in. So thank you for what you're doing. Finally, we're pleased to have Mr. Brad Dean with us, who is CEO of Discover Puerto Rico. He'll be talking about one of Puerto Rico's growing economic segments, a segment that people often think is bigger than it is, and hopefully it is on its way to becoming as big as it can be, which is tourism. Mr. Dean has over 20 years of experience in the travel and tourism industry. He was tapped to head Discover Puerto Rico upon its inception in 2018. He holds many leadership roles in the industry. And this year, he was named State Tourism Director of the Year by the National Council of State Tourism Directors of the U.S. Travel Association. Welcome, Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Fiscal Oversight Management Board, Governor Pierluisi, Mr. Esco, Mr. Alcuri. Thank you for the opportunity not only to join you today for this important and timely discussion, but also on behalf of my team, my board of directors, and the more than 5,000 businesses we serve and represent. Thank you for the leadership that you've been providing in helping to stabilize our financial health, enhance our competitiveness, and lay the foundation for future prosperity in travel and tourism. Much has changed since the last time we met, not the least of which is the worst crisis ever in the history of the global travel and tourism industry. As you would expect, our strategies have evolved, our tactics have expanded, but one thing has not changed. The mission and vision of Discover Puerto Rico is every bit as relevant and arguably more important today than ever before. So we remain fiercely and fearlessly committed to putting the transformative power of travel and tourism at work for the people of Puerto Rico as we elevate Puerto Rico's status as the premier leisure, business, and entertainment destination within the Caribbean. I'm pleased to report that 2021 will undoubtedly be the biggest year in tourism in Puerto Rico's history. Of particular importance to you, the model used by Oxford Economics, which analyzes the economic impact of tourism in over 30 states in the mainland, suggests that the taxes generated by the tourism industry for calendar year 21 will reach $887 million. That's 125 million more than the previous all-time record and twice what was generated last year. The BLS numbers suggest that we have recaptured 28,800 of the jobs lost at the height of the pandemic, which brings us just a few percentage points within pre-pandemic employment. And the lodging industry in Puerto Rico is enjoying an extraordinary year with revenues to date over 35% over the previous record year. And that includes double-digit gains, not only in demand, but yield, which means our industry is driving the top line and the bottom line. Add to that several consecutive months of record tax collections and deplayments, and you can see that Puerto Rico's tourism industry is performing very well. But what's most important and exciting to me is we're not just beating our previous records. If you look at the numbers released monthly by the U.S. Travel Association in concert with Oxford Economics, and you look at the average growth in Puerto Rico in 2021 versus the 2019 year, and then compare that to the average in the U.S., there's about a 20 to 22% differential. We're not only beating our records, we are leading the great recovery of travel and tourism in Puerto Rico. Simply put, Puerto Rico's tourism industry were a football team, we'd be going to the Super Bowl in 2021. Now we know, and you've often reminded us, and Mr. Esco never fails to remind me, that it's not enough to tell you that the industry itself is doing well, that we have to demonstrate to you, to the government and the people of Puerto Rico that the investment in the DMO is paying off. And indeed, I'm pleased to report some extraordinary results from your DMO team. We use tools like Adara and Arrivalist to measure the impact of our advertising, and they suggest that through the first 11 months of this year, we have influenced or driven $665 million of lodging business. Our meeting sales team, in the midst of a pandemic where meetings are being canceled or postponed, has actually contracted and put on the books of local hotels $52 million of meetings and convention business. And the pipeline of future business that's now considering Puerto Rico and meetings and conventions is up 65%, over $160 million where it was pre-pandemic. If you take the money that we've invested in 2021 and compare it to the returns in the influence lodging and those meetings and conventions bookings, that's a 76-to-1 return on investment. And then consider when we use tools like Cision that measure the impact of the positive publicity, the value as if we were buying it, over $324 million of positive publicity generated for the island of Puerto Rico. And we're not through yet. The next 2 weeks will generate extraordinary value in positive publicity as well. Add to that, their sales team has reached an all-time record level of travel advisors, what many still refer to as travel agents, who have been enrolled in the Puerto Rico Training Expert Program, which is helping to drive 33% increase in consortia travel sales in the midst of a pandemic. And our digital marketing team has delivered on average over 14,000 referrals to local businesses. That means 14,000 times a week, we're connecting a potential tourist to a local business in Puerto Rico. And you'll note at the bottom of the chart before you, we continue to measure brand health using the same standard industry measurements we've used in the past. And all three of these are pointing in the right direction, not only in our core markets where we're advertising, but in the secondary and national markets as well. If you think about it, there's really only three ways you can grow tourism. You either bring more people, or you convince the people that are coming to stay longer and spend more. In our space, you usually try to get one or two of those pointing in the right direction, but we're pleased to see that using Adara and Arrivalist independent valuation tools, it tells us that when you look at the visitors who are coming who have seen our ads compared to those who are not, they're not only more likely to visit, they're staying longer and spending more, which underscores the importance and the impact Discover Puerto Rico's team is having on the tourism economy in Puerto Rico. And then when you add to that, I can get to the next chart. The results in 2019 and 20, what you see is for our first 3 full years, with an investment, by the way, that was half of what the island was investing before a DMO, you can see that we've influenced or generated almost $7 billion of economic impact, over $675 million of tax revenues, generated over $750,000 in positive publicity, and booked over $200 million in meetings and convention. You can see clearly the DMO model is working in Puerto Rico, and this provides the building blocks for a prosperous future as we continue to grow travel and tourism.
Travel has changed forever, but one thing will never change. Discover Puerto Rico, your DMO, continues to guide the tourism industry through every challenge. Throughout the pandemic, Discover Puerto Rico quickly adapted and has positioned Puerto Rico stronger than ever. We pioneered new marketing strategies, and drove higher traffic to our social channels. We shared our island's beauty. We made headlines and garnered accolades. We inspired visitation and drove bookings. We forged new partnerships and helped protect our smallest treasures. And yes, we won even more awards along the way.
Thank you to the National Council of State Tourism Director for this honor.
And the Emmy goes to Sounds Like Puerto Rico.
The past year has been filled with twists and turns, but our DMO was built to face adversity, to help our industry restore, rebound, and rise. The coming year won't be another comeback story. It will be a takeover. In
2022, Discover Puerto Rico will continue guiding our industry forward, taking Puerto Rico farther than ever. As travelers around the world seek new adventures, we invite them to discover Puerto Rico.
Question before us at Discover Puerto Rico and the tourism industry right now is how do we build upon this historic record success and ensure continued growth and prosperity so that it's not just a flash in the pan, but we continue this record pace? And I think that's a particularly important question. When you stop to think of travel and tourism in Puerto Rico as not simply a segment of the economy that fills restaurants and hotels and generates taxes, but think about your tourism industry as a tool in the economic development toolbox. If you think about it, travel and tourism is really a first date for relocation, commercial investment, and economic development. Nobody's going to invest in our island and bring a new business or create jobs if they haven't first experienced the island. They're going to experience the safety and health protocols at the airport. They're going to ride in our taxis and our Ubers. They're going to stay in our hotels and dine in our restaurants. If we deliver a great vacation and meeting experience, we're also creating and contributing to the kind of economic climate that Secretary Sidre and Roderick Miller spoke to earlier. And we also know with quantitative information that if we do our job well as a marketer, we also contribute to that with the advertising we're doing. Even though our advertising is focused on travel, tourism, meetings, and conventions, Longwoods International conducts a halo study in hundreds of destinations throughout the US and Canada. And they survey the views and perceptions and reputation of the destination, looking at people who have and have not seen the DMO advertising. And as you can see before you, those people that have seen the advertising that Discover Puerto Rico places are far more likely to think of Puerto Rico as a good place to live, to retire, to invest, or maybe start a business or a career. So this takes on added importance as you look to what we're planning for 2022 and beyond to not only drive economic results in the travel and tourism industry, but to be a part of the economic development team and become a distinct competitive advantage for our island. So what are those tactics? Well, first and foremost, we are going to relentlessly seek every short-term opportunity we can to continue that progress in 2022. Yes, we're still facing a lot of challenges. The cruise industry is not fully recovered. The meetings and convention business is expected to recover nationally over the next 2 years. Airlines are facing some unprecedented challenges, and we're still not out of the woods yet as it relates to the pandemic. But our plans, and I must compliment the governor for doubling down on tourism in this pandemic and investing more in promotion. The plans and the additional investment we believe are going to allow us to turn those stumbling blocks into stepping stones. First and foremost, we're going to accentuate the impact of the single biggest television broadcast ever in the history of our island. 2 weeks from today, an hour before the big ball drops here in New York City, Puerto Rico will be on the national stage during the ABC broadcast of Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, celebrating their 50th anniversary. That hour, of course, our time is an hour ahead, so 11 o'clock New York time, midnight Puerto Rico time, we will be hosting our own historic countdown in Spanish, the first ever nationally televised countdown in Spanish, which will take on particular importance to 60 million plus Hispanic in the US. Not to mention showcase Puerto Rico. It's not only a great place with beaches and wonderful weather, but the location at the wildly innovative new entertainment complex, Distrito T-Mobile, and the Convention Center Plaza will send a not so subtle message. Puerto Rico is more than just beaches and beautiful weather. Puerto Rico is a great place for a meeting, a convention, and it is quickly becoming the entertainment mecca of the Caribbean. We're also going to triple the number of on-site visits of meeting planners, travel advisors, travel and trade media, as well as influencers. And we've added a loyalty program to create an incentive for that team, that army of 21,000 plus travel advisors who are now trained to sell Puerto Rico, and a number of other tactics that we won't get into today. We're also going to elevate the national province of Puerto Rico. For the first time ever in the history of our island, we will have a strategic, research-based national campaign, including television advertising in every market in the United States throughout 2022. And this campaign and all of the multifaceted tactics that underscore this will allow us to reach a broader audience and not just broader, but deeper, to start to dive into verticals and niche markets where we've had our toe in the water, but we haven't competed fully. This will include DE&I marketing. It will also include a number of other tactics, and it'll also allow us to expand the storytelling and the brand positioning to new markets. And our sales team is aggressively targeting marquee events and conventions. A marquee event to us is one that doesn't just fill hotels and restaurants, it brings national publicity, whether news media, trade media, and it brings thought leadership to our island. It showcases Puerto Rico as the place to have a meeting and convention. Already, for 2022, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Travel Association, and the North American Travel Journalists Association have committed to hosting annual meetings in Puerto Rico, and we're currently in consideration in the final stage of RFPs for 4 other national and global associations. And in May of next year, Puerto Rico will host the largest gathering of hosted buyers and meetings and conventions in the entire United States. Normally, a destination tries to get 15 or 20 meeting planners to come and see what you have to offer. In May of next year, over 2,000 premier buyers, which represent billions of dollars of meeting convention business, will descend upon our island to experience and see firsthand what we have to offer. This allows us to begin as well to start to delve in and broaden that reach and deepen that reach. As I mentioned earlier, not only will we now be able to expand in markets like LGBTQ+, the U.S. Hispanic market, expanding our efforts with the diaspora, who are some of the greatest ambassadors Puerto Rico has in the U.S., but also at times to double or triple the number of markets where we'll be advertising, which we believe allows our partners at Eurostar and the tourism company to begin to more aggressively recruit airline service. And our sales team has added some very specific tactics backed by the resources that the governor provided in the ARP plan to specifically target and enhance our ability to go after meetings and conventions in high priority targets for Invest Puerto Rico and the Department of Economic Development. So for example, if Roderick and his team are going after the tech sector, or if Secretary Cedre is targeting pharmaceuticals, we're going to go after their trade association meetings. And the simple premise is this: their clients become my prospect, and my clients become their prospect. It's not a strategy that's commonly used, but we think it's perfectly positioned in time for Puerto Rico to lead in this particular space. Now, a lot of what I've shared with you is domestic, but we're not ignoring the international market as well. The fact is, to grow Puerto Rico as a global destination, we would have to invest considerably more than we have today, and it would take a long period of time to do that. But we know, and the research affirms, that we can grow international travel to Puerto Rico. And so we will be increasing our presence and our promotion in 6 markets where we either have nonstop air service, or the data shows that we have enough visitation to support some level of nonstop air service today. So we're going to focus on, and fish where the fish are, right? We're going to grab that low-hanging fruit, but we're also studying other markets. And we're not doing this alone. We're building upon the partnership that already exists between Discover Puerto Rico and the nation's DMO, Brand USA, who have made a 6-figure commitment to helping Puerto Rico promote itself in each of these countries. Now, beyond these tactics and strategies that we're deploying to increase our results, we also know, and we are 100% aligned with the challenges that you put forth in the current fiscal plan to enhance the competitiveness of our industry. It's not just enough for us to do more and better, but we have to provide tactics and strategies and assistance to allow the more than 5,000 businesses that we support and work with to improve their results as well. I mentioned earlier that our digital marketing team has generated over 626,000 referrals to local businesses, but our goal in the near future is to drive over 1 million in a calendar year. We're also hoping that 2022 is the year when we finally unlock those elusive matching funds that are written into the law that created us, which will truly create and accelerate the kind of public-private partnership that you envision and that our island needs and deserves. We're about to launch La Idea, the Island Digital Education Academy. This is an innovative tactic that's not being used anywhere else, and we're really excited to unleash this on the island. There is a massive amount of disruption happening in the marketing world today, much of it driven by major platforms like Google and Meta, and it's creating a divide, winners and losers. And many of those small businesses in Puerto Rico that don't have a large corporate office and a marketing staff are getting left behind. So this is a specific, tailored approach to help those businesses enhance their digital marketing, to bring them along so they can better compete not only with their peers on island, but off island as well. And just this week, our sales team deployed a team of consultants to assess the revenue management processes of small paradores and inns and smaller hotels, trying to help them manage the yield. And it's looking at what they can do better, but what we can do better to team up with them. All told, we are excited about the future and bullish on what lies ahead. We're not naive, many challenges, but we believe with the additional investment that will take place over the next 2 years, we're well positioned to work with our partners in the public sector and the private sector to continue to deliver great results, to continue leading the nation in tourism growth, and ensure you and the people of Puerto Rico that the best days of our tourism industry lie before us and not behind us. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dean. Are there questions or comments? Antonio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dean, first of all, thank you for your presentation. I have been very impressed by the results of the DMO. As a resident of Puerto Rico, you can see, I think, the difference. And it is clear to me that your organization, through its work, has really helped grow the different segments of the tourism industry in spite of the real challenges that we have faced over the last few years. I'm going to make a couple of comments. One's going to be very narrow, and then I'm going to make a broad comment. I would like your reaction. You mentioned the year-end event, and I was somewhat surprised that a lot of the folks in Puerto Rico actually felt that why would we be spending money on that when there's all these other priorities in reconstruction and education and so forth. So I would actually like you provide you an opportunity to share with us in that tactical specific example, why an event like that, an investment like that, why is it important for Puerto Rico and how it translates into economic results. And then I'm going to go really broad in my second question, which you can address as you like, intertwined with the first one, which is traditionally Puerto Rico has only had single-digit participation of tourism in GDP, 6-7%. We really should be able to do a quantum leap on the GDP participation, which really does translates into jobs and economic multipliers. How do we do that? How do we drive the tourism GDP from 6 to 12% and provide a significant accelerated growth in this segment that is so important for our economy?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for two very insightful questions. Let me begin with the New Year's Eve promotion. I think you have to start by understanding, and there seems to be many people that perhaps I take it for granted sometimes, we're in the know and in the deep of this. Not everybody realizes this. If this was a 6-course meal, that 15-minute broadcast on national television, that's just like the 3rd course. I mean, already today, we're 2 weeks out from this event. We've already received $22 million of positive publicity. And I think something we can all agree is Puerto Rico needs more positive publicity. We haven't even reached the point where the co-hosts are doing national interviews on the primetime morning shows. And when we reach that evening, this puts Puerto Rico on the stage with iconic cities like New York, Los Angeles, and New Orleans. Imagine you're sitting in Cleveland, Ohio, and all due respect to our friends in Ohio, and it's about 10 degrees below zero, and you're not sure where you're going on your next vacation. And you see people in shorts and short sleeve shirts, partying, dancing, having food. And then you think about it and realize what better place to wake up on New Year's Day and after partying and this great extravaganza we're going to host, you stroll in soft sandy beaches, enjoy those cool Caribbean beaches. But more important than New Year's Eve weekend is what this does for us ongoing. This signifies that Puerto Rico is not only a must-attend destination, it's got an extraordinary walkable convention center district with unprecedented opportunities for entertainment and gathering. Already we're seeing interest. And I think this underscores something we're seeing and most people don't realize. Right now in the United States, the average size of a meeting or convention is down about 25%. We're actually seeing an increase of 20%. Now, why are we getting larger groups? I'd love to take credit for that, but honestly, the main reason is Distrito T-Mobile and the Convention Center are now being seen as a viable alternative to people who never even considered Puerto Rico. So what this does is it not only puts Puerto Rico on the map in a major national publicity moment. In fact, the second highest watched broadcast, a non-sports broadcast. The only thing that gets more viewership is Macy's Day Parade. And Governor, maybe we need to go there next year. But until then, what this does is this gives 42 million or more consumers an opportunity to see Puerto Rico in a light that they don't know. To Roderick's point earlier, They're going to forget about Hurricane Maria. They're going to forget about all the troubles. They're going to realize that Puerto Rico is the entertainment mecca of the Caribbean. And this is a hot market that's on the move. The second question you ask is, we believe that anything less than 10% of the GDP is a red flag that indicates that our tourism industry is not yet performing at optimal levels. There is undoubtedly an opportunity over the next 3 to 5 years with a consistent investment in marketing at a competitive level, not where we've been, but where we'll be in the next couple of years. If we could continue that beyond 2023, we believe there's no doubt that we'll be able to generate an additional $1.5 to $2 billion of economic impact. And you know the tax impact of that. But that's only with the product that we have today and what's planned. If we could establish a world-class tourism product plan and grow air service beyond the Eastern United States into the Midwest, the West, and just those high priority international markets, we actually think Puerto Rico may be the only state or territory that has a legitimate claim on doubling tourism revenues over the next 5 years. You're not going to be able to do that in Florida, California, or even here in the great Empire State. So we think we're talking billions of economic impact and hundreds of millions of dollars of taxes, but it's going to take consistent, strategic, well-funded marketing. It's going to take a tourism product plan that doesn't exist today. And then we have to grow air service and begin to address some of the workforce development issues that are a challenge in our industry.
Thank you. And we certainly look forward to work with you on this exciting road ahead of us coming out of bankruptcy.
Thank you.
Great. We're running quite late, but we have time for one quick question. One more quick question. Sorry, I have to rush a little bit.
Thank you very much. It was a very, very impressive presentation, and it makes me very happy to see the mention of air service to the West Coast made me especially happy because I live on the West Coast and it's a long way from there to Puerto Rico. I was wondering if you had any numbers on the level of employment in tourist-related jobs in Puerto Rico. That's for a long time, that's been a matter of interest for me because I want to help create as many jobs as possible. So maybe think about how many jobs are there, what challenges you have in growing employment in tourism and anything along those lines.
Yeah. You know, the numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics suggest that we're doing better than our counterparts in the mainland, but we're still not doing well. This is a major issue for the travel and tourism industry. It was before the pandemic, and the problems we've experienced in the last couple of years have only exacerbated that issue. The quit rate in tourism nationally is almost 3 times the national average. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, we lost a lot of people or escorted a lot of people out of our industry that are not coming back. Recently, we brought one of the preeminent researchers in our industry who did a national study on what's it going to take to solve this issue. The findings were so alarming, but also the suggestions were so innovative. We said, we want that. So we brought them to Puerto Rico to duplicate that study. And I think it really shed a light on some of the things that need to take place. And some of the ideas that are in our plans for 2022 made it possible by the investment of ARP funds are the first steps in that regard, but they're baby steps. The fact of the matter is this, we're almost at pre-pandemic levels, but talk to any business in the tourism industry and they'll tell you before the pandemic, they were running too much overtime, they were exhausting their people, and they weren't actually able to be able to capture the quality of workforce. I believe that solution is not going to be targeted at people my age, but I'll give you a good example of how it can work. We're a small organization. We only have about 50 people. 6 of our employees are the comeback kids. These are Puerto Ricanos and Puerto Ricanas who left the island because they found a better job here, but they came back to the island because they love their island. They wanted to be a part of a team that was promoting Puerto Rico, and they saw an opportunity that they didn't want to work in government, but they did want to work in something that would be impactful for the entire island. We think solutions like that are certainly going to drive forward. Now, 6 people is a rounding error on the numbers that you see, but if we could position our island as a premier employment opportunity for diaspora and others that want to return, and also be able to target some of the talent that's in the island, particularly universities, we think there's a solution. We put some measures in there, but again, they're baby steps in the right direction. I think one of the challenges in this for Puerto Rico is that everybody sees this as a challenge, but nobody owns it. And certainly has to be a public sector part of that. But some of the necessary steps are also going to challenge the business model. We have to think differently about our industry. We have to behave differently in terms of recruitment and workforce development. We think the DMO is a part of that. But this is an all-in solution, all on board, public sector and private sector, if we're going to grow that. Bottom line is this: we may have the employees to set a record for this year, but best case scenario, the labor and workforce issues are going to be an impediment to progress. Worst case, they could derail our progress.
Well, thank you. If there's anything from that study you could share with the board, I'd be very, very interested in seeing it. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I have a flight to catch, so I'm going to have to run out now.
Certainly understand.
But thank you to
Dr. Biggs.
everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. The work that you're doing is extremely exciting, and we want to be part of it in every way we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We now have time, a little bit of time for public comments. If anybody has public comments, if you do, please, I guess, head to the aisle. I think we'll have a microphone.
Hello?
Yep, it's working. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Dr. Shakira Haddock-Lazala, and I have a two-part comment. The first part is on behalf of my friends. First of all, Puerto Rico is not a product. It's a people. And we won't be sold as slaves. So part one. And if it is a product, it's a product of imperialism and colonialization. One of the questions today was, how can they, the FOMB, help us achieve our mission and goals? My friends have requested that I relay this message. One is end Act 22 and 60, give opportunity to natives of the island. We need hospitals in Vieques and an ambulance system around the whole entire island. And sorry to say this, Pierluisi, they asked you to resign. My part of this that I want to say is that the answer to how you can help us is that they, which is you, they can't. So I and we humbly demand that you stop forcing us to make bricks without straw, stop persecuting our patriots, and let my people go. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We certainly understand your frustration, and we would like to finish what we've come to do as quickly as we can, and when we're finished and fiscal responsibility is returned, we certainly will look forward to stepping down. Justin.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. I want to echo what the chair said about understanding some of the frustration. I've been somebody who, from my time on the board, has thought that we should do everything that we can to hasten its exit. I believe Americans should be represented by the people they elect, like your governor, not by an unelected board. That said, Congress created this board. Our job is to restructure the debt. Good news is we made a lot of progress this year. I think next year we're going to finish it. And then personally, I'd be in favor of amending the statute so that the board would go away immediately. Because I think that I definitely agree with your point that you all who live in Puerto Rico, who are American citizens, should be represented by the people you elect, like your governor. Thank you.
Would you like to say anything, Governor? Antonio?
Yes, hi, and thank you very much for voicing some of your concerns. I have to say that having been involved in this process from being in the cabinet of Governor Garcia Padilla when we ran into financial difficulties and were not able to really pay the debts, to enacting actually with Governor Pierluisi when he was a resident commissioner and working in a bipartisan way to achieve the enactment of PROMESA. PROMESA might not be perfect, and maybe there might be very different points of views. However, an economy cannot grow with a level of debt that is 12 times when you add bondholders and pensioners, over $120 billion in debt. Therefore, the role of the board is to help the government of Puerto Rico come out of that situation. As a Puerto Rican and a resident of the island, I feel very proud that we have been able to achieve very substantial reductions in the amount of debt, especially very substantial reductions in the amount of money that is spent each year from the budget. And I believe that the real positive outcome of our job, of what we're doing, is, first of all, get Puerto Rico out of bankruptcy, which is going to be good for everybody, regardless of their political point of view. And secondly, turn the page from restructuring to growth. Help the education system become what it should be and drive job creations such that you and your colleagues, your friends, can have real opportunities in Puerto Rico to come back and have your families there and help the economy grow for the future. Thank you.
Now, I'll just say one last thing, and that is, I really appreciate the respectfulness of your comments. You know, I don't, you have a tough message, you know, and it's not a message that's kind to us and to others, but I think this is the way to have, pardon? It is, I guess, kind in a way, not kind in other ways, but this is, I think, the way to have the conversation. And certainly I and others are open to continuing to have it in other forums, you know, one-to-one, whatever seems most useful. So thank you for your comment. I really do appreciate the way that you framed it, and you're making it, because you represent a voice of many people with the things that you've said. Other public comments before?
Can I just
conclude? Do I, well, actually, I want to say a word before we adjourn the meeting. We'll adjourn it in just a minute, but I wanted to say a couple of final words before we adjourn. What we've heard today from the government of Puerto Rico is, in my view, truly inspiring. What we heard today is a clear vision for Puerto Rico's future. We also heard, in between the presentations, some very loud voices of criticism, as well as a more measured voice of criticism just a minute ago. To me, those voices are important voices. They need to be heard, and they reflect the pain that Puerto Rico has suffered for far too long. And I'll just add, I mean, there are real status issues, and I'm sympathetic to the status concerns that people have. Nobody on the oversight board or myself has any intention of denying that pain. I assure you that it is on our mind every day, and particularly every day that we serve, it becomes more and more real to us. We may not agree with many of the things that we heard today from our critics, and our critics don't agree with the solution we believe is necessary. But that doesn't mean that we ignore the voices of dissent. We shouldn't ignore those voices. We can't ignore those voices. One of the speakers we heard today made a comment that in 5 years we haven't done anything as an oversight board. One of the reasons that the debt restructuring took so long, or has taken so long, is because everybody on this board understands our responsibility for Puerto Rico's future. The debt restructuring that is before the court right now, and we're hopeful that the judge will confirm it very soon, is very different from the plan that we proposed 2 years ago. And even more different than the plan that we might have proposed if we had proposed a plan before Hurricane Maria. In 5 years, we believe that we've helped to stabilize Puerto Rico. It's not enough. There's still a long way to go, and we heard that as well today. I fully agree that Puerto Rico needs to grow. It needs to be the kind of place where people who are here can go back to Puerto Rico if they desire to go back to Puerto Rico and find opportunity when they go back. To a very large degree, that growth and how that growth will be achieved is up to Puerto Ricans and their elected leaders. That's what we've been talking about today. That's what we've been hearing about today. That's why the government and Puerto Rico agencies speak today, not the oversight board. We were listening, not in speaking mode today. We can't overcome the crisis by hoping that the past was different than it was. The history of Puerto Rico as part of this country were different than it's been. The past is what it is. We're stuck with that. We can only overcome today's crisis by coming together and building the future that we all want. We will disagree. It's important to disagree. We will argue, we will debate, but let's move forward and let's create the future that we all want, that Puerto Rico needs. And thank you to all who have been with us for this meeting. It's been very, very helpful, and I think very encouraging to me, but also underscoring the differences, disagreements, and many of the stresses. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Antonio. A second? Second, all in favor, say yes. Yes. And I see John saying yes. So I now pronounce, I suppose, that this meeting is adjourned. Thanks again to everybody who came and everyone who commented and everyone who spoke. And for press, I invite you to stick around for the press conference after.